CFR six. He also worked a full-time job installing electronics for many of the bikes in the paddock. His passion for all sides of racing, riding, developing, and even running his own team this year prove that Aguilar will be a force to be reckoned with in many capacities in the future. Aguilar finished his season with 6 wins, 3 second-place results, and 1 third. He scored points in every race, and his R6 suffered 0 mechanical failures. His competition was fast, but Aguilar proved to be the most consistent. Prior to 2017, Aguilar had yet to take a win in Superstock 600. But this year's season proved that he's a fast learner, in more ways than one.
As you can see, a short video, but I think it's something that is definitely worth sharing. Jason in 2017 becoming the MotoAmerica Superstock champion, and he would go on, of course, as we know, to stand on the podium in the Supersport category as well in recent years, as well, of course, as last year making his Superbike debut, which was something I know that he was particularly proud of. As I said, if you are just joining us, we are going to be chatting over the next hour or so about Jason, and we'll work through a list which I think most of you have been sent. So I'd like now then to call on the MotoAmerica chaplain, Mr. Raymond Rizzo, to officially open proceedings.
Thank you, Michael. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're coming through loud and clear, Raymond.
Awesome. Yeah, as Michael said, I'm the chaplain with MotoAmerica, and one of the things that really I think blessed me with Jason was spending those times with him praying prior to the race. During COVID, it was always a challenge to pray with riders out in the grid, but it was a joy to be able to do that privately, like in the hauler or the trailer. And Jason was always one of my favorites to be able to pray with. And he was always very inclusive and you know, a real tough competitor, yet real. You know, I really loved being able to interact with him no matter where we were, no matter what we did. He was just such a blessing, and we're definitely going to miss him. And one of the things I wanted to leave with each of you, I think, is very encouraging. One of the things that Jesus said that I think stilled a lot of hearts, gave a lot of comfort. And it was, the story basically was right before he was going to the cross, and he was at the Last Supper. And he let everybody know, his first words were, "Don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged. I'm going away, and it's a good thing, because where I'm going to prepare a place for you." And he said, "When the time is ready, I'm going to come and get you." And I think hopefully all of us can take those words and let it be an encouragement for us today. And I know Jason was a believer, and we were excited that, again, we were able to be a part of his journey. And I know there was ups and downs, there was frustrations at the track, and yet always with a good spirit. Like I said, the guy was just incredible. So I want to remind Bob and family, everyone, all the competitors, most of you on this call I know and love, and anything that you need from us, we're there. But if it's okay, I'd like to have a word of prayer. So let's pray. Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to experience your love through Jason. What an incredible man, what an incredible competitor. And I know that you are proud of him, and I know his family's proud of him, and all the riders that competed with him. Is always a clean, incredible rider, and we just thank you for those opportunities, and we want to take with us all of those blessings. Continue to remind each and every one of what you're preparing and what Jason's getting to see now. How awesome that must be, and I look forward to that day to reunite with them, and we'll thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. We're now going to turn to Bob Aguilar, Jason's father, as he has some words that he would like to share with us. Bob.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to try to, actually, I'm having a little issue here. Not sure how to get on. Can people see me?
You've started to share your screen, Bob. So if you unshare the screen, we should be able to see you on the camera.
Okay, I'm not quite sure how to do that.
If you look to the top of your screen in the center, there should be a little option that says View Options. And if you just click on that, it should allow you to stop sharing the screen. Or at the bottom in the center, there should be a little green icon.
And it's up at the top where it says you are sharing.
There we go. Now we see you.
Okay, now you can see me? Okay.
Yeah, we can indeed.
I wanted to start off by talking about, Jason loved racing. That was his first true love. And I wanted to just kind of go over some of his racing accomplishments for some of you that, some of you can reminisce, and for some of you, it'll be something that you didn't know about him. So his racing accomplishments in 2017, he was the SC Mini GP Blotta Cup champion. Also in 2007. He was also the SC Mini GP Rookie of the Year. In 2008, he was the SC Mini GP Semi-Pro Pocket Bike Champion. In 2008, he was the Mini Motorsports Mayhem Open Pocket Bike Champion. Actually won some cash for that race, which I guess that was his first pro win. 2009, he was on the winning team of the M1GP 4-hour endurance race 50 stock class. In 2009, he was the SC Mini GP Thumpstar GP champion. It was a spec class. He went undefeated that year, won every single race. 2010, he was the SC Mini GP Pro GP champion. In 2010, he started racing on the big tracks and was the Wera West Formula 80 champion. And in 2010, he was the M1GP 8-hour endurance race champion, or race winner on that team. 2011, he moved up to a bigger bike, was on an RS125 chassis with a CRF 450R motor. And he was the Wera West Formula 2 expert champion. That year, he was also the 2011 Wera West Clubman expert champion. In fact, from that picture in Las Vegas, he won all 4 of his races that day. In fact, he set 10 class track records that year on that bike. He ended that season with a perfect 3 wins and 3 races at Chuckwalla Valley Raceway, and in the process set 3 track records that day. 2012, he was part of a team that won the 24-hour M1GP 24-hour endurance race. They were the overall winners. In 2012, he was the M1GP 4-hour endurance race 100 mod class winner. And by the end of that year in 2012, he started riding a 600. He was the smallest competitive 600 rider in the country. And by the end of that year, he started winning races on the 600. 2013, he also won the M1GP 24-hour endurance race again, was on the winning team. And one of his dreams came true in 2013 when he was a road racing world young gun, recognized as one of the young guns. 2013, he started racing at Willow Springs, was the Moto West Grand Prix 600 Superbike champion, and also the Moto West Grand Prix 750 Superstock champion on his 600. And of course, as most of you do know, in 2017, as we'd mentioned before, he was the MotoAmerica Superstock 600 champion. Now in 2021, he was unable to compete because one of his primary sponsors, due to some COVID issues, was not able to fulfill their sponsorship obligation, had to pull out, which canceled his plans to go into superbike racing. And he became a crew chief for Michael Gilbert. And in his very first race as a crew chief, he was a winner, as Michael won that first race of the year. In 2020, during his last time on a MotoAmerica podium at Barber Motorsports Park, when he was being interviewed, he said, "I don't think you're ever happy until you win." You know, that's how competitive he was, but he was a winner in a lot of other ways. You know, Jason would frequently quote World Rally champion Colin McRae, who said, "You're here for a good time, not a long time." And in Jason's case, that proved to be all too true. Now, Jason was born October 9, 1996, and that's him on October 9, 1996. From the very beginning, he was drawn to anything mechanical, but especially anything with wheels. It's actually him with his case for all of his Hot Wheels that he had. Now, when he visited his grandfather, Papa Gale, at his vineyard in Gilroy, California, he'd go straight to the tractor when we'd get there, point at it and say, "Dirt." So I think may have been the first word he could say. And he wanted to let everyone know he wanted to ride on the tractor. So he'd sit on the tractor with his Papa Gale and hold on to the steering wheel. And by the time he turned 4, he was able to drive that tractor on his own. So he took to anything mechanical. And we'd take him to Toys R Us. He'd go straight to the bikes and the little electric cars that they would have there, or pedal cars. And by the time we were ready to go, we'd have to drag him out of there kicking and screaming. He didn't want to leave. You know, he wanted to be around anything that had wheels. In 1998, I started working for American Honda Finance. It was in their corporate headquarters for Honda North America in Torrance, California, where they also, Building 500 is where they have the motocross teams. They also have the AMA Superbike teams headquartered there at that time, and some other racing activities there. But there was one room where they would set out posters for people who could come by and pick up posters. Sometimes they were signed by drivers or riders. And there was one poster in particular that really caught Jason's eye. And that was the Dunlop poster with Nicky Hayden on his AMA Superbike at that time. And that started Jason's love affair with motorcycle road racing. Now, when Nicky moved up to MotoGP, Jason followed his career closely. And in 2005, that marked the return of MotoGP to the United States for the first time since the 80s. And for Christmas present, at Christmas of 2004, his grandfather got us tickets for the MotoGP race, and we went. That weekend, Nicky Hayden dominated the weekend, ended up winning the race. And as we were walking, leaving the grandstands at turn 4, Jason was holding his grandfather's hand and said, "Papa Gale, this has been the best day of my life. Of course, that guaranteed that Papa Gale was going to buy us tickets for every MotoGP race at Laguna Seca for every year after, which we thoroughly enjoyed, and really cemented Jason's love of road racing. Now, in 2006, I took Jason to an AMA Superbike race in Fontana, California. It was California Speedway. Now it's known as Auto Club Speedway. And as we were walking through the paddock, Jay took off running just fast as he could. I took everything I could do to try to catch up to him. And by the time I finally caught up to him, he was at the SC Mini GP tent where they had a little miniature pocket bike on display. By the time I caught up to him, he'd already talked to the owner, Josiah Talby. He turned to me and said, "Dad, they give you lessons on how to ride these things. Do you think I could get a lesson for my birthday?" And I said, "Well, we're going to have to ask your mom." And of course, immediately, his older sister said, "Oh, sure, his mom wouldn't agree to something like that." But I showed her a video that I found on the internet of some little kids drive, 5, 6-year-old kids doing about 5, 10 miles an hour on these little pocket bikes. She took one look at that and said, "Oh, that's cute. He can do that." Neither one of us had any concept for how fast these things could actually go. So we took him to his lesson. We signed him up for his 10th birthday. That was his very first time on a motorized two-wheeler of any type. He wasn't one of these kids who grew up riding dirt bikes or cruising around on various types of motorcycles, whether it's dirt or street. He had no experience whatsoever. He got on the pocket bike and did pretty well in this lesson. And at the end of the lesson, the racers were getting ready to go out for their first practice. And Josiah came over and said, "You did pretty well. If you'd like, you can go out for the racers with their first practice." He was terrified, but so excited he didn't want to lose out on the opportunity. So he went out on the track. By the time he was finishing his first lap, he was getting lapped by the fast kids. About 5 laps later, he was reeling guys in, starting to pass guys. He ended up finishing mid-pack. First time he'd ever ridden anything with 2 wheels, that had a motor. So he ended up racing that day, finished middle of the pack, and was so excited. On our way home, he said, "This has been the best day of my life." And we decided to get Jason a pocket bike, let him start practicing. He'd go to a little place called Rialto Airport Speedway, which is a small go-kart track. And he would practice and practice and practice. He'd stay out on the track till his bike would run out of got. He just loved to ride so much. Now, most of these racers, as I'd mentioned before, had experience on dirt bikes and racing pocket bikes. I told them when we were going into this pocket bike series, I said, "Don't think you're going to get on the podium right away. If you train hard, you may get on the podium by the end of the season if some of the fast kids crash, as long as you work hard and really apply yourself." Well, Jason wasn't having any of that. His very first race, he got the whole shot, led for the first lap, and then he got passed. He finished second place. That was Jason's worst finish of the year, and he went on to take the 2007 Blotta Cup Championship, which gave him a sponsored ride on the next step up in pocket bikes for the next season. Now, over the next several years, there were many best days of Jason's life related to his racing success, but his life isn't just defined by the racetrack. So I'd like to focus a little bit on the remainder. Oh, by the way, that's Jason, his very first day on a pocket bike back in 2006, enjoying his birthday present. He was more than a talented racer. His grandmother, Grammy Alice, always used to tell him, "You're not just a good kid or a good racer. You're a good person." And she was right. Jay was a good person. He was extremely competitive for an early age, but he was also rather introverted. That drive, combined with his reserved personality, gave many the impression that, he was self-centered, selfish, stubborn, and difficult. And, sometimes he was, but that really wasn't who he was. He was focused on the pursuit of his dreams, and he still had time for his friends and others that shared his interests. He was kind. He volunteered his time to work with the Special Olympics when he was a child. He always had a soft spot for handicapped kids. And a lot of that comes from his mother, Ellen, who works with the local school district working with severely handicapped kids. And she would take him to some of those classes sometimes. And he really enjoyed working with those kids. He had a real soft spot for them. Jay didn't like school, but he did well. You know, when his schedule allowed, he would, as you know, as a racer, when it conflicted with his racing, he had to do something about that. And he went to a program with our local school district called La Entrada, which was set up for athletes. You know, some of them were Olympic skaters, actors, models, you know, child actors and models, so that they could continue their education while still pursuing their professional pursuits. Well, Jason ended up graduating at the top of his class. You know, he never got to go to a prom, never got to go to a graduation because I was always conflicted with his racing, but he was where he wanted to be when he was on the racetrack. Something some of you, or many of you may not know, is that Jason was a black belt in Taekwondo. Although I can never, ever remember him using those skills against anyone or getting in a fight. You know, he was a peaceful, gentle person. He had a silly sense of humor. You know, kind of remember him like this. He was a silly kid and enjoyed having fun. Once you got to know him, you'd see that side of him. He also had a somewhat mischievous streak. Now, when Jason was about 4, we had company over. It was family, mother and father, and then the daughter, who was one of Alyssa's dance competition team partners. And while we were having dinner, he was about 4, and he takes a big, long drink of milk and then just lets out this Class A boomer of a burp that just practically shook the house. I looked at Jason very sternly and said, "Jason, what do you say?" He looked at me and goes, "Nice rip." And of course, you know, I got major stink eye from his mom over that one. Still haven't lived that one down. But you know, that was kind of his devilish sense of humor and silliness. Jason was terrified of bugs. You know, and remember when he was getting the keys out to open up the front door, a moth flew in front of him. He threw his keys and his phone up in the air, breaking the phone when it came down. But any bug just terrified him. But he was mostly afraid of spiders. Every night before he'd go to bed, he'd perform a spider patrol around his room looking for any spiders. And whenever he was in the garage, he would go on spider patrol with a can of brake cleaner. Any spider that was unfortunate enough to get within his path would get a full dose of brake cleaner until it had expired. We went through a lot of brake cleaner in our house. Fortunately, one of his sponsors provided a virtually unlimited supply of that, so we were quite lucky in that regard. Now, anybody who spent time with Jason can attest that he's one of the pickiest eaters in the world. I mean, his pickiness knew no bounds. This was a birthday cake that he had on his birthday that he won one of his SC Mini GP championships. And you see him, he wouldn't eat anything without smelling it first. But even though it was cake and everybody loves birthday cake, he wouldn't even touch it until he smelled it. I'm sure some other people can talk about how picky he was with his eating. But he was a tough kid. He would endure a lot of pain during his racing career. This was best demonstrated by events in 2016. At Barber Motorsports Park, Jason high-sided coming onto the main straightaway in morning practice. He was knocked unconscious and broke the longest 5 bones in his right foot, shattering one. And that's him after he got out of the hospital that day and went back to the track. The next race was 2 weeks later in Utah. Jason didn't have time to get his broken foot operated on and plated, but he went anyway. After he passed the concussion protocol and demonstrated to Dr. Rossi there that he could put weight on his right foot, he was cleared to race. Now, just getting the boot on his foot was painful enough, but when he would come in off the track, we would have to literally lift him off the bike and set his foot into an ice chest to reduce the swelling. Jason struggled in qualifying, and he qualified 20th in that race. But in the first race, he finished 10th. In the second race, he started from 20th position, and he finished third. Finished on the podium. this is him in the podium with his crutches, getting ready to go up on the podium and receive his third place trophy. And there he is with one crutch still, so he could get up on the podium. He endured a lot of pain. The following race at Laguna Seca, he had a terrible high side, knocked himself unconscious again, and was ripped his stitches from the surgery that he just had a few days before. He wasn't supposed to be racing according to his doctor, but he wasn't going to miss out on the race. Qualified third, was really looking forward to a good race, and ended up ripping the stitches out of his foot. First person who was there when I got to the medical center was Raymond Rizzo, saying, if there's anything I can do to help, I'm here for you. And that's just the type of person he is. And I want to thank you and acknowledge you for that. And that's why I'm so happy that you could be here for this, because you've been so good to Jason and our family in that regard. And as I'd mentioned before, Jason was rather reserved and introverted with the general public, but he'd really open up with people that he shared common interests with. When it came to talking about racing or mountain biking, he was very lively and animated and could talk to anybody for hours about that. He was also very loyal to his friends and sponsors. He was a good friend, and you'll hear from several of them later tonight. Jason wasn't much of a partier, wasn't much of a drinker. In 2013, Jason was on the podium. They handed him a bottle of champagne. First time he'd ever been on a podium where they handed out champagne. While the other racers were happily spraying their champagne around, Jason's just standing there. And I was kind of wondering what was going on. Then it hit me. He didn't know how to open a bottle of champagne. He didn't have a clue. He had to wait for one of the other guys to come over and show him what to do so he could spray his champagne. So obviously he wasn't much of a drinker. Now, in the early stages of his racing, he didn't work on the bikes. That was done by myself and some other people. But, they were just kids back then. They'd get off the bike and run off and play together. But when he joined Tuned Racing, he learned how to work on the bikes. He'd drive up to Bakersfield quite often to work. And I think under the tutelage of people like Mike Pond and in particular, racer and mechanic Bryce Prince, he learned an awful lot about the work ethic that it takes to be successful in racing. Now, Jason became a respected pro who was a team owner, rider, manager, won a MotoAmerica championship a few days after his 21st birthday. I believe he's the only one to do that at such a young age. At 24, he won his first race as a crew chief. And it was from that championship year, Pancho Rangel. Pancho was probably prouder than he was. He was respected in the paddock for his roles as a rider, an electronics expert, a team manager, and a team owner. He accomplished so much in a short time. But Jason had another life, one which really wasn't revealed to me until his passing. And that was, I knew he was into mountain biking, but I didn't know how good he was. He was really well respected. And I didn't realize that until I attended some of the memorial rides and saw the turnout, and the people there really talked about him in the same breath that the MotoAmerica racers talked about Jay, about what a great person he was. He wasn't a player. He really only had one significant romantic relationship, and that was with Megan McDonald. He met Megan in 2017. They'd recently moved into a lovely apartment in Costa Mesa, and along with their puppy Finn, we're building their life together and looking forward to eventually building a family. And despite enjoying an occupation that presented considerable risk and a favorite hobby that also presented a high risk of injury, Jason was not a daredevil. He was very methodical and calculating in his assessment of risk and how he acted on that risk. He had the mind of an engineer and would work things out in his head before taking action. That was his approach to racing too. Even early on in the pocket bike days, he would do lap after lap after lap that would vary only by a few hundredths of a second, as he would very gradually lower his lap times by a few hundredths at a time. Now, he understood the risks and told us he knew that the things he did could potentially have fatal consequences. He understood that. And for him, the risks outweighed the rewards outweighed the risks. He preferred to live his life to the fullest, and that's what he did. He had many opportunities ahead of him as a motorcycle road racer, likely transitioning to a crew chief eventually, or likely racing mountain bikes and or cars when he would retire from motorcycle road racing. Unfortunately, this story was not headed for a happy ending. It took a bad turn on February 5th when a mountain biking crash took Jason's life. This loss has been indescribably painful. I don't have adequate words to describe the loss. Now, we didn't realize Jason had impacted so many lives or reached that his reach extended around the world. We did realize that when I realized that I had to put something out on Facebook because my phone was blowing up when word got out that Jason had been injured. And within a few hours, we had over 1,000 responses on Facebook. Fans from Italy, Spain, England, South America, Iraq, Pakistan, Malaysia, New Zealand, Philippines, Australia, Argentina, Brazil, Venezuela, and all of North America were offering their condolences and support. We didn't realize the extent of its reach and that so many people from so far away saw the Jason that we saw up close. But I know that's not what Jason would want us to celebrate. He lived his entire life pursuing his passions. He was uncompromising in the pursuit of those passions. That was not always comfortable or easy for the rest of us or the others in his life. He could be extremely frustrating and stubborn, but he lived the life he loved, and he lived it to the fullest. The best way for all of us to move forward is not to try to forget, but to remember that passion Jason had for living, and to try to apply some of that to our own lives. Live, love, and laugh. That's what Jason would want. He packed more living into 25 years than most of us do in an entire lifetime. And there's a lesson to be learned there. While his time here was too short, it was worthwhile. He lived a great life. It was not a long time, but it was a really good time. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. That was really beautiful words. We're going to stay with Jason's family now. We're going to move to his sister, Alyssa.
Hi, everyone. For those of you who may not have seen me before or don't know me, I'm Jason's older sister. I don't know if he talked about having an older sister. He might have been embarrassed of me, but that's me. And I really just want to just highlight everything my dad said. I think everything he said was spot on. And I was kind of deciding how I wanted to do this, and I felt like the best approach that I wanted to take would be to just kind of share random memories. I've had a lot of folks ask me what my favorite memory of Jason is, and I don't know if I have a favorite. I think that there's a lot of like little funny stories and things that we had that meant a lot to me, and so I'll just kind of just touch on a few of those to share with you all. And so again, we're 15 months apart, so we're very, very close in age. I was born at the end of June of 95, and he is beginning of October 96. So we're really close in age. So my parents told me, of course, I have no recollection of this, but my parents told me that when Jason was born, my dad brought me to the hospital, or I was brought in by a family member, and I saw Jason and I started crying because I was sad that all of the attention was off of me now. Everything was about me for, that amount of time, and now it isn't. And so, oh gosh, I was so upset. And then there are some photos when we were just babies still of me, strangling him, or just kind of, shoving him aside and other things. But as of course we both got older, that was short-lived to some degree. And we got really close. We did a lot of things together, and I was really grateful for that. As I was younger, I danced, and that was sort of the thing that I did. And I remember Jason trying to figure out what that thing was for him. And He did t-ball, he did gymnastics, he played drums for a little bit. He did all of these really interesting things. And then I remember that he and I would be playing video games together, and he was always just so naturally good at all of the racing games. So whether it was motorcycle racing or car racing, any of those games he was so good at naturally. And I thought, oh man, I must be really bad at these. That really is unfortunate, but it was actually the opposite. He was just exceptionally good, and he was just able to catch on to that so quickly. And I eventually sort of bowed out of racing him because it was useless to me. But my dad stepped in and played with him, but then they would always get frustrated with each other because, you know, one of them maybe pulled like a little bit of a dirty move or had a little Pedrosa moment or something like that. And so it was always really fun for me to watch, though I still stayed there and hung out. And then once I decided, you know, that I wanted to take a break from dance and try something else, I saw that Jason was actually doing Taekwondo at the time. And so I stepped in and did Taekwondo with him, and we got our black belts together, which was really exciting. And it was nice to finally get to spend more time with him and do things like that together. You know, there are some stories of when we would spar, you know, maybe I would win a couple of more times. There was also maybe a time where we were on the way to Taekwondo and I accidentally elbowed him and, you know, had a little cut lip. Definitely an accident though. And just little moments. Mom did not think it was an accident, but it was. And just those little moments, it was really special. But when he found racing, I knew that this was going to be something that he did for a long time and that he was just so passionate about because he was just so naturally gifted at it. Just to see the progression of his ability over time has just been amazing. He, of course, had a lot of natural ability, but he also put in the hard work and dedication to really make things happen. He sacrificed a lot of things to pursue this career. As my dad mentioned, he went to independent study school for a little bit, and he did that so he could pursue racing, and he had the flexibility to travel and all these other things, and that was his priority. And I know that, you know, as his family, we were a little concerned as to like the quality of his education, but you know, he still got a fairly good education, but he was doing what he loved most, which was racing. And so it was, of course, you know, once he started there, it was a bummer not seeing him around at school anymore and things like that. And I didn't have that bigger sister protection over him as much. But it was just so amazing to see all the things that he accomplished, all the connections he made, and just everything he was able to do. I kind of always, you know, viewed him as my baby brother and still like, you know, this small, shy little kid. And as he grew up, you know, I really saw that change, and I saw all of the things he was accomplishing. I saw his amazing just technical and mechanical ability just come out and shine and find its place. When we were kids, he would take Lincoln Logs or Legos or whatever thing, or like electrical circuits, whatever we were playing with, and he would make stuff that was not even on the box, just all of these crazy ideas and inventions that just came to his head, and he was able to make it happen without a second thought. And meanwhile, I'm sitting over here just struggling, trying to read the instructions and figure things out and what piece looks like this, and I couldn't do it. And I think anybody who's had a conversation with me knows that I have always been in such admiration of Jason's technical and mechanical ability. I wish I had an ounce of it. He was just so brilliant in that area. And it's unfortunate that he doesn't continue, or that I didn't somehow magically get that ability. But it's really been amazing to just see his career progress and see him just develop and grow as a person and someone beyond my baby brother. But he's a national champion. He is amazing at his day job that he does. I know some folks will speak to that later. And again, it's kind of technical, so I might not be the best person for it. And then also as a partner to his girlfriend, Megan, and just a friend to so many people. And I just place so much value at being able to witness that and to be able to help. And I was happy that I got to help him with his career when it came to sponsorships and making connections, because that's something that I'm good at. But everything else was really him and all the folks that surrounded him and supported him. And so I'm just so grateful for everybody here for helping make my brother who he is, for my parents for raising us to be who we are. And although Jason and I are very different, and I'm sure we were different to raise and handle, still it's just nice to know how many people he's touched and what an impact he's made on the community. And it's nice to know as well that his impact will be long living and long lasting. And I remember asking him, hey, Jason, what do you think you're going to be doing, after you retire from racing? Because eventually you'll have to retire. I'm always thinking ahead. And so I just thought, okay, well, he must be thinking ahead too. But no, he knew what he wanted, but he also still really lived in the moment, and he didn't stress about all those other things. He didn't stress about people's expectations of him. He just lived his life and did his own thing. And that's something that I really have a lot of respect for, and I really appreciate. And that's something I'd like to incorporate into my life as well. And although my career path is different, I want to be an attorney. And I know that we aren't always the most fun. I just, really want to encourage everybody here, go out, live your life, try that thing, do what makes you happy, because you never know how much life you had. And I want to close with, I think Jason's loss it's going to be hard. It's going to be something that sticks with me for the rest of my life. Again, we were so close in age. I expected Jason, to be with me for the rest of my life. Now I'm an only child, and I don't have that person, next to me on this journey. And so I miss him a lot. And I know if he were here right now, he would, tell me to stop being so dramatic and everything else. But he's my younger brother. I love and care for him immensely. And I know that I know that he got what he wanted out of his life, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm getting a little emotional, so I'm going to go ahead and cut myself off. But again, just thank you all for being here and for loving and supporting my brother. I don't think as a sister I could ask for anything more.
Thanks, Alyssa, and thanks for sharing some of those memories. We're now going to remain with Jason's family. We're going to hear from his aunt, Karen. Karen, over to you.
Thank you. I remember the night that Jason was born. My brother, Bob, called me, and there was just nothing but joy. This completed the Aguilar family. We finally had a boy and a girl, and Jason was the first son, the first grandson, the only nephew, and it's a terrible jolt to our family for that to be gone now. When his father told me, though, that he had the boy, at the time, there was just nothing but celebration. And my husband and I went back to our danger and hardship posts and left my brother with the really terrifying job of being a parent, a father to what would become a world-class athlete in a really dangerous sport. And I was very grateful for him having done that, and gratitude continues even to this day. I didn't really get to know Jason until he was a teen because I was gone so much. But in a strange twist, they made me his guardian for a race weekend, and I picked him and Bryce Prince up at the airport and drove them to the racetrack. And on the way discovered that basically Jason was, at this point, this incredibly goofy, completely city kid. And they spent the entire time in the backseat playing keyboard cat and telling jokes about bodily functions. And at breakfast, they told us they didn't have a good night's sleep because of this spooky ass cornfield that was next to the parking lot. And I was very bewildered by this, but they explained that although racing was relatively safe, these dark corn stalks were absolutely terrifying. And I thought, these are truly city kids. Then I took them to the racetrack, and this goofball I watched in this incredible transformation from goofy city kid to lethal competitor. And the first thing that popped into my mind was Terminator, not the Schwarzenegger one, but the young, cool looking one. And that was his game face throughout the entire race. He was amazing. And not having seen him much before this, I was astonished by how good he was. His talent was breathtaking. It was extraordinary. I know that he was blessed with his father's fearless athleticism and the many dangerous things that I know he did when he was a teenager. But he also was blessed with his father and grandfathers and probably great-grandfathers' mechanical skills and capabilities. They were really impressive. But this was tempered, connected, doubled, however you want to put it, with his mother's bird-boned, elegant, tiny, extraordinarily elegant and attenuated physique. And this combination of athletic fierceness and this lightness gave him this unbelievable feline grace and speed and balance. And it was just a joy to watch him. I thought, this kid needs to keep racing, even though as professional diplomat, it wouldn't have been my choice, but it was clearly his choice. And I said, Jason, before we agree to help you as, silent sponsors, I need to ask you something. I said, don't do this. Let me just suggest that you not take up this profession. I said, look, unless you just can't help it, because there are hundreds of easier, safer ways to make no money for the rest of your life than motorcycle racing. So don't do it if you don't have to. And he said, not for me. This is the only thing for me. This is all I want. This is what I want. I can't not race. He said, if nobody helps me, I'll find a way. Somehow I will do it. So this was a pretty relentless competitor and fierce determination coming from someone so young. But in addition to being a competitor, he was a gentlemanly sportsman. And I think this was partly because he just loved the community so much. He loved the community found in the racing world. He loved the community found in the mountain biking world. This was something that gave him a support and a pleasure that wasn't really obvious unless you went into some depth with him about it. He would just never do anything to hurt anybody in that community. And he knew motorcycles and mountain bikes were dangerous. He knew those were dangerous sports. He loved them enough to risk life and limb. And I want to make it clear that he loved that life and limb. This was not some suicidal, reckless guy. He loved what he did, and he wanted to keep doing it for as long as he could. And I guess 25 years old was as long as he could. So the only comfort that I have, and it's not much, and it hasn't kept me from spending weeks weeping, was that his perfect young body now brings life and health to others. And I keep wondering if these guys know they got a piece of a star, a piece of perfect flesh in these ailing bodies. I like to think that somehow his DNA is boosting their metabolisms at this very moment, and that some old dude with Jay's kidney is wondering why he suddenly feels the need for speed so strongly. And I think some poor concert pianist with a Jay's liver is wondering why he can't get keyboard cat out of his head. So I celebrate his extraordinary life. I was pleased and proud to be his aunt, along with his other aunt, who is too weepy to talk right now. I'm proud to be his aunt. I loved it. I was his biggest fan. I loved him dearly, but grief is the price we pay for love. And I see that despite his risky choices, hundreds of people had the courage to love Jay and risk having to pay that price someday. I just wasn't ready for it to be so soon. So I was not going to say rest in peace to Jason, because like me, I cannot imagine him resting anywhere, but I do say race in peace, Jason. And that's really all I have to say about it. So.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to Jason's uncle, Mr. John Fox. John. Is John on the call?
Here. I think
there we go.
I forgot to unmute myself. Yeah.
No problem.
Thank you.
We can hear you now.
Okay. And thank you also to all of those who gave presentations before me, all of which were moving and I think difficult for those that gave them, and also very interesting. And particularly, I think Bob's in that category, as he told me many things that I had not been aware of at the time. As Karen pointed out, we spent a lot of time overseas. And so for many of these formative events, we just weren't even in the country. And it was only after we came back to the country, finally after 13 years straight overseas in 2003, that we, and I particularly, began to understand what an extraordinary person and talent Jason was. And Karen and I began going around to a number of towns that weren't much more than a racetrack with a mayor and a Chili's. And if there was ever a Chili's, Jason was going to find it. And I started seeing what it was that Jason could do. And I do remember very well one race in particular. I can't remember when it was, but I know that it was at VIR, Virginia International Raceway. And in that race, Jason, look at the clock. And in that race, Jason got a slow start. And I think he was actually 17th in the pack. And then I watched as lap after lap, he just went after those other riders one by one, passing them, until in the end, he was in third place. He was on the podium. I had been told about his talent by enough people that I believed it. But here at that race, I saw what a fierce, competitive spirit he had as well. And it was after that race, I think, that I decided with my wife that we had to do what we could and what he needed in order to keep racing and realize the great potential that he had. And to a certain extent, he was able to do that. He did not live long enough to experience the wonderful things that no doubt would have been in his future. Jason and I were different kinds of people. We had different interests, but one thing we had in common was Yamaha. He raced Yamaha motorcycles and I play a Yamaha piano. As a matter of fact, I spent a certain amount of time searching Amazon in the hope that there would be a t-shirt that advertised Yamaha racing motorcycles and pianos. And yet it turns out that apparently Yamaha the clock again. Apparently Yamaha has missed this obvious moneymaker. Now, Karen talked about some of the experiences she had driving him around with his good friend and fellow racer Bryce Prince, and how they would never stop playing Keyboard Cat over and over and over again. Well, here it is. I don't have a Yamaha motorcycle, but here for one time only and never again, just for Jason, is Keyboard Cat. That's for you, Jason. Here's to you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Keyboard Cat. I've got to say, I'd never actually heard of that before, but that was a beautiful rendition. Okay, let's move on to Jason's girlfriend, as Bob said earlier on, his one sort of main relationship. Megan McDonald will speak for us now. Megan.
Hi. This might take a second. I'm a little nervous, a little shaky. Never did all too well with a big attendance or audience. So yes, hi, my name's Megan. Jason and I would have been together for what would have been 5 years in August. From the beginning, when you meet Jason, you just know, like, he's very indescribable. I'd like to start off by talking about our first date. I did some research. August 14th, we went on our very first date. He picked me up in his black lifted truck. I heard it rumbling down the street and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is my dad gonna think? Please don't bother the neighbors. He picked me up. We went to downtown Disney, which was maybe about a 5-minute drive from where I was living. We ate sandwiches, and that's where I got my first taste of what it was like having a meal with Jason, since he only ever ate sandwiches with just the bread and the meat. No mayo, no mustard, no lettuce, no tomato, literally just the bread and the meat. You know, I never looked at that as a downside. I just went, okay, well, I guess that's more for me if you won't take your scoop of avocado, guacamole, whatever, you know, more for me. We saw a movie, which I swore to myself I would never, ever, ever, ever do, but we saw a movie. And after the movie, we went to this like 15-foot fireplace that's kind of centered in between all the resorts there. We were there until almost 3 o'clock in the morning, just talking about ourselves, asking each other questions. And eventually this gentleman comes down and sits next to us, introduces himself, and went on to offer us drinks and ask us how long we've been like living together. He had no idea I was only 19 at the time and Jason was 20. But we played along with it, and we had said that, oh, you know, we've been together the past year and a half. Yeah, living together is great. And getting that feel for his sense of humor and spur of the moment kind of confidence and attitude towards that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is funny. This is cool. I like this. We can kind of bounce off of each other, and it was great. eventually one thing led to another. And, Jason made all the first moves. He was, the first one to be like, hey, I love you. Anyone that knows Jason knows that he can be very sarcastic, not necessarily the serious type. He takes his racing serious and really only probably his chips and salsa. But I didn't even say anything for the first week. I was like, okay, like, that's really nice of you. Eventually I did tell him, okay, I love you too. That was a undying joke for a long time. He was always the first one to call me out and say, remember that week you didn't tell me that you loved me? Just very much Jason, Some of my fondest memories revolve around the Sprinter van that he bought. Bob and Ellen can attest to the fact that him and I would be out until 2:00 in the morning. Jason would be doing all the work and I'd be sitting there with the flashlight, making sure he can see what's happening, but I'll still take credit for the van. We would run to McDonald's, pick up a 20-piece chicken nugget with fries and a Coke, go back, sleep. He'd be up 6:00 in the morning, riding with his buddies. Sometimes I'd be out shuttling with them. We come home at like 11, start the van all over again. Honestly, such an amazing time. People are like, why would you do that? Like, you're wasting your time. You could be out doing other things. And, I always just involved myself in those parts because unfortunately, you don't plan for things like this, but Jason and I have talked and he was fully aware, I was fully aware. We were honestly just trying to embrace every moment possible. Let's see, sorry, I have bullet points written down in my phone, so I lost track. Now, in regards to spending every second together, that would be, dropping them off at the airport, picking them up from the airport, just FaceTiming each other whenever we could, honestly, just making the most out of every moment, really being there for each other, showing my support. I would like to think that Jason and I have taught each other a lot. Jason's taught me how to not let other people's opinions and thoughts bother me, that I should live every day to the fullest, and how to properly bake sugar cookies so they have just the right amount of crisp to them. They had to be crispy on the outside. I'm still getting a hang of it, but I'd say for the most part, I have it down. We had a lot to work on when it came, to communication and taking each other into consideration, but nothing that couldn't ever be resolved by talking about it, being understanding, giving each other a kiss before bed, and moving forward the next day. This part is a little tough for me. On Valentine's Day a few years ago, Jason wrote me a letter, which is not like Jason. He's not someone who wears his heart on his sleeve. And in the letter, he went on to say, I thought I knew what love was. I love pizza. I love racing and my family. But with you, everything has been different. It's like learning how to fall in love all over again. Or maybe it's learning how to fall in love the right way. I will forever hold these words near and dear to my heart, especially because, like I said, Jason was never one to really show emotion. He always just, Jason was honestly my best friend. We shared a lot of stories, laughs, tears, hugs, and most recently moved into a place. We got our dog Finn that he absolutely adored. There wasn't anyone else that I really wanted to spend the rest of my life with. We were supposed to buy a house together, get married. We were talking about eloping in Yosemite, just keeping it so small and just running away and doing it. Sorry, Bob and Ellen, but just making the most out of our lives because it was just why not? It felt right. You know, kids and creating a lifetime of memories together. Although I'm still feeling deeply upset about the loss of my true love, I find some peace in knowing that he was doing something he was passionate about and surrounded by people that he loved and cared for. Now, you know, at this time, I cannot thank all of you guys enough for being here and being part of this. Thank you to those that have reached out and shared their favorite memories or photos of Jason with me. It really means a lot. I will continue to keep his spirit alive by talking about him, sharing my favorite stories with friends and family, and having the same awful sense of humor that won his heart. I will forever love Jason. Thank you, you guys.
Thank you, Megan. That was really beautiful. We're going to spend a little bit of time now moving away from family members and move into the racing fraternity. And we'll start by speaking to the founder of the SC Mini GP, Mr. Josiah Tolby.
Hey, everybody. I just want to make sure you can all hear me okay.
Yeah, you're coming through loud and clear.
Great. I'd like to first start off by saying that, you know, it's a real honor to be asked to speak here today on behalf of the Aguilar family. Bob, who's just an incredible father. And of course, Jason, who was a living legend in the making. I'm Josiah Tolby, and I was asked to speak here today because, as Bob put it, I ran a program that introduced Jason to road racing, which, lo and behold, happened to be a big deal for Jason. I happened to get a chance to know Jason when he was a young boy, which was really something special. I often think about the times at SC Mini GP and my time in youth road racing, just in general. And I'm just in awe of how many kids who experienced that special time in my life have all grown up to become such incredible adults. I pay real close attention to them. I'd like to think, you know, I had something to do with it. But after many years at the track, I would give the credit to the families who gave these kids the support they needed to succeed in life. I just always felt that SC Mini GP was a place where they could apply their ambitions. Bob, like many other dads out at the track who I call my role models for being a father, are truly guys I looked up to. And I feel so lucky to have spent time watching the interactions they had with their kids, particularly Bob and Jason. At the time that I ran SC Mini GP, and I watched Jason develop and ride a variation of small, wickedly fast motorcycles, I had no children of my own. And of course, I feel like all the kids that rode with SC Mini GP in a little way were like kids of my own. Ironically, I am a father now of two beautiful boys, actually 18 months apart. You know, I routinely, I can routinely tell you that I often ask myself when making decisions about my children, what would Bob do? Or any other incredible parent that supported their kids at SC Mini GP. I often think about my own experience with my dad, who I personally am very close to. I saw that in a lot of the relationships with the kids at the track. My dad used to always say to me, you know, Josiah, all I need to do with you is point you in the right direction, motivating you do on your own. And I often think about that statement as it comes to Jason and Bob. But I would say Jason took it one step further because, let's be honest, Jason didn't need to be pointed. He was dragging Bob in the direction he was headed. And all Bob had to do was be there for Jason to bounce off of from time to time. If you knew Jason, you knew he had plans and he was going to make them happen no matter what. I could see that first day I met him at the AMA races in Fontana when he ran over and happened to talk to me about what we did. I could see that in him when I was teaching him to ride a pocket bike in our youth course. And I literally watched it in him as he won his first championship, the Blotta Cup. I don't think it would have mattered what Jason did. He was going to do it just the way he saw it. And I'm sure others who experienced him as he grew into an established adult will speak to just that today. I'm not the first to say this, but it's hard. Nobody wants to lose somebody they love, regardless of their ambitions in life. But I absolutely think we could all agree that Jason lived his life to the fullest and always applied himself to what he loved. I attribute that to the family who supported him and the family and the people he met along the way that did exactly what SC Mini GP did, allow him to apply his ambitions. May we forever celebrate Jason's life and offer love, support, and our condolences to his family. I want to thank you, Bob, Alyssa, the Aguilar family, so much for the opportunity to be here today. And I really do look forward to hearing about all the amazing experiences Jason, as I would say, the legend, had with everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josiah. We now move on to pocket bike mentor for Jason, Paul Grasham, or Grassam, if I pronounced that correctly. Paul, over to you.
Hi, it's Grasham, but it's fine. Just don't call me late for dinner. The Aguilar family, Bob, Ellen, and Alyssa, it's good. I love you guys, and I love Jason. I'd forgotten, Bob, about Jason being a black belt. And I can tell you there is some things that that applies to the track, like his ability to feel pain and not let it affect his performance. It's a black belt trait. To be able to take fear and turn it to reason and assess what it's going to take to win. Black belt trait. Definitely applies to racing. Jason was, I think, 5. Is that right, Bob? When he first started, and I had I've worked with a lot of kids through Taekwondo, and I was a Sunday school teacher for a while, and then SC Mini GP. And the best thing about working with kids for me was what I learned from them, because I think I've learned so much more than what I taught them. But Jason and I saw each other from the beginning on a certain level. He treated me that first season, I think he treated me like a crew chief before I was his crew chief, because he knew he was going to win that championship. And I learned from Jason how to win championships, because I was just new at this and flying by the seat of my pants. And, Jason for sure was about winning races, but the goal was championship. And what I learned from him is that as long as you keep that goal in mind, the races don't matter as much. Sometimes you lose and you still win the championship. And as a crew chief and running the Blotta factory racing team, we won a lot of championships. And I learned that from Jason. And those lessons I learned from Jason have gone on through the rest of my life. And I will continue to exercise them. The other thing I learned from Jason is my childhood was a lot different than Jason's. I got a little tainted from SC Mini GP because all those dads that were there to support their kids, 100%. And you know, Bob especially, like was just so devoted. The whole family was so devoted. And you get in the real world and fatherhood looks a little different. And it was hard when that ended to not be exposed to all those dads and moms and siblings that were so devoted. Anyway, those lessons I'm going to take with me, I'm going to pass them on. You know, Teo, who isn't here, my son, we talked finally about Bob and Jason a lot and those lessons that we learned. And we'll take those same lessons and pass them on. Teo will pass them on to his kids, and I will pass them on to the grandkids. And Jason will never be gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We heard earlier how Jason went from being a racer on circuit to being a crew chief. So let's hear from the rider that he was a crew chief for last year. We're going to hear now from Michael Gilbert.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I think there's many familiar faces here and a lot of people we know and maybe some people we don't. So I think that just introducing myself, I'm Michael Gilbert. I think, you know, Jason and I had kind of been side by side for many years, not only in racing motorcycles, but as friends and mountain biking and many, many things in between. Now, that being said, I wrote something the other day about Jason that I'm sure that many of you guys had seen on social, but then again, maybe some of you guys haven't. And what I really tried to encompass in this is that I feel very lucky to have known Jason in many, many different regards. You know, I think a lot of people see him as a racer, or we have other friends that see him only as a mountain biker. But I felt this broad scope of knowing him on so many different levels, and I felt really honored to know that. So what I wrote is about that, and I kind of wanted to read it to you guys and maybe touch on a couple things while I'm reading it. So what I wrote is I said that Jason Aguilar is one of my best friends. I said our relationship was deeply rooted, and I feel very fortunate to have been so tight with Jason for more than half our lives. Now, Jason and I met when we were, I want to say we were 12 years old. Bob could probably correct me on that one. And we were out at Grange Kart Track with M1GP. I think I saw Young in the group here as well. And we were riding NSR 50s. It was my first ever day riding a road race bike. And Jason was actually my instructor. Jason was the control rider and the first person I ever learned from. Now, I was giving him a hard time until this day that was probably not the person I'd wanted to learn from the very first time, but we'll leave it at that. So now, having grown up with Jason and embraced his lighthearted but almost immature, almost always immature side, I can't help but think about all the good times, the pranks, the laws we may or may not have broken, and the questionable yet amazing decisions that made stories for a lifetime. We really did have a lot of good times, and I have a lot of content on my phone that maybe I would love to share with a lot of people, but I don't think that it's always the most appropriate, but we'll hold that close to heart. We had truly a lot of good times. Now, Jason was always such a character and had such a sense of humor to him if you knew him as well. And I threw this quote in. When we were 12 years old, Jason said this. He said, "Pizza's like sex. When it's bad, it's still pretty good." Now, he didn't just tell me that, he told his father that, again, at 12 years old. And I'll always hold on to that one. That one is that one really kind of strikes at home on Jason's sense of humor. So and you know, as much as we were friends, we were competitors. And I'll never forget, in 2017, we were fighting each other for a MotoAmerica Superstock 600 championship, and it literally came down to the last race at Barber Motorsports Park. Jason won, you know, and as badly as I wanted to beat him, there's no one I'd rather share the podium with and share that championship with. And in fact, I think I held his umbrella on the grid for him before he went out for the last final race and wrapped up the championship. And I think at that moment in time, it was probably one of the most difficult days of my life and probably the best day of his. And in hindsight, it really doesn't matter, but it's a really unique memory to be able to share with him. Really, really unique. But the best part about that whole year racing each other was the fact that we would be done racing on Sunday and probably be mountain biking Monday afternoon when we got off a flight back to Southern California. And I could literally remember times where we'd be mountain biking Wednesday morning and my mom or his mom or one of our family members would drive us to LAX to get on a flight to go out to the races together. We were literally side by side the entire time. And we go to the races and not even look at each other for 4 or 5 days at a time. It was a really unique relationship that we had. But at the end of it, we were still just friends. And then, of course, Michael and Bob touched on it. One of my favorite memories is seeing Jason kind of grow into what he was, not only at his job at Flash Tune and how smart he was and talented he was, but I actually hired him in 2021 to be a crew chief for me, and we went racing. And we literally won the first race of the year, and we lost a lot together too. And I think the most important part of all of that was that we learned a lot from each other. And we grew a lot together in that same sense. And truthfully, Jason was so much more impressive at his role as a crew chief for me than I truthfully even thought was imaginable. He took it very, very seriously. And kind of side note with this one, I was joking with him. I don't remember, maybe at Road Atlanta or Virginia. I said, man, like I was having a hard time sleeping, just being a competitor. You get a little bit of pressure on yourself. And I was joking with him. I'm like, man, at least you're not riding anymore. You can sleep at night on the race weekends. And he said, BS, I've been up all night working on maps for you and looking at our strategies and coming up with a plan. I'm probably way more stressed out than you are. And it just kind of proved my point of how seriously he took it. And man, he did a really good job. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't want one more year like that. A selfish part of me was wishing that we could go racing together one more time, because truthfully, I felt like we still had a lot of winning left to do. I was so stoked for Jason to be putting the Super Sport program together for the 2022 MotoAmerica season, and to see him going racing. But again, there was a selfish part of me that wishes we had another year together, because again, we learned so much together, and I felt like we were only at the beginning, and we still have a championship to win. So we'll on my part, I'll be able to go after this 2022 championship and have Jason riding along with me and all the knowledge that I learned from him. And hopefully maybe we can wrap that one up. But everyone deserves a friend like Jason Aguilar. I can't wrap my head around losing him, but I'm thankful for all of those memories. I hope that we can learn from his character and the unapologetically selfish attitude that helped him live exactly the life he wanted to. I think everyone can attest to Jason's sort of selfishness and doing it and living life exactly how he wanted to, regardless of what other people thought or maybe wanted him to do as well. I'm sure Megan and his parents can say some words there. He was a lot of fun. And I feel very lucky again to have known him in so many different scopes of life, and will truly cherish that friendship. So until we meet again, thank you guys.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, we'll now cross to Rob Linders. If Rob is on the call, over to you, sir.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Jason and Bob were the very first friends that Tyler and I made at the racetrack when we first started racing. We went to an event with SC Mini, which Josiah had mentioned from earlier, and it was in Montana, and that was our very first race. And they were the first competitors that we met there. We began a lifelong friendship that's lasted through this entire time. SC Mini was a great place, and it was a great way for dads and moms and their kids to bond. I really enjoyed that time that I've been able to spend with our families. We ended up spending many race weekends together over the following years. Our boys raced and played together, and they grew up together, and it was a wonderful thing. If you know Jay, and some other people have mentioned this already, but he was a really picky eater. And one of the things that he absolutely loved, though, was pizza. And I can remember after race weekend, sometimes we'd all go over to a place called Mama Luca's and have pizza there. Another pizza place he introduced us to, one year we all went up to Laguna Seca, and we had Patty Murphy's pizza. That Jay really liked that pizza, and we tried it, and it was great stuff. So that's definitely one of the picky things that he would enjoy and love to eat. Lots of memories are coming in my head, and so I just want to share a few of them, and then I'll pass this on to the next person. I remember Jason telling me, and I think Bob touched on this some too, that he figured out he wanted to race motorcycles after going to a MotoGP race with his grandpa Gail and with his dad. He said he watched the race that weekend and watched Nicky Hayden win, and it was the best day of his life. That's what let him know that that was something he wanted to pursue. And it was just a neat way to have that love and continue searching for that love and racing motorcycles. I remember one time a bunch of the boys were going to race an endurance race together. And Jason came up with a name for the team. It was called the Poison Dart Frogs. And I remember asking him, why did you choose that name? And he said, oh, I don't know. I just like the way they look. And so that's just Jason. And a guy that gets something in his mind and he goes for it. I remember a weekend we were out at Buttonwillow racing, and Jason, one of his bikes broke. I don't remember which one it was. And he was pretty bummed out. And we had an NSR that I loaned him to race. And he didn't even get a chance to practice with it or anything. He just hopped on it and gridded up for the race. And Jay ended up coming in first or second that weekend on that bike, and was super happy after that. It was just a neat little experience of us hanging out together. I remember him coming over, and after the boys all got older and Tyler would come back into town from college, Jason and Michael would come by, and I'd get to hear about their different races and see Jason's cool cars. He had a really cool Ford Focus RS that I loved, blue color. And then he got a WRX after that. So it was just neat staying in touch with them and learning about their adventures and things they were doing. Jason was extremely focused, and he always wanted to do things his way. And he did that by continuing to chase his dreams with racing. I loved keeping in touch with him and Bob and to learn about all of his successes and his championships, because he had a lot of championships. And I always thought of Jay like my own son. I'm going to love you, and I miss you, Jay, and race in peace until we meet again. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Before you just switch off, we're going to stay with Rob, because he also has a message to read out from somebody that can't be on the call today. I think, Rob, you have a message
Yes, I do.
from Craig. So I'll hand over to you to read that, sir. Sure.
This is from Craig Sable, and he couldn't be here. He's training for a new job right now, and he's in the middle of Ohio driving a truck and through the snowstorms. So he wanted me to read this for him. Said he's been blessed to know the Aguilar family and all the wonderful memories he's shared. And it's no wonder with the arrival of Jason to Bob and Alyssa that he would have a major contribution to future memories. My son, Race, and Jason were a year apart and shared many similar likes and wants: video games and the beach. While Bob and I were hanging out and surfing, the kids were just being around, having fun and being kids. I received a call from Bob asking if we'd like to join Jason and him for Jason's birthday present. Race and I were in. What none of us knew, however, was that special birthday gift would turn out to be an incredible lifestyle. The gift that day was riding pocket bikes with SC Mini at California Speedway. Jason took to the track on that pocket bike with a natural talent. Both kids were giddy following the experience and begged to continue racing. Joining the families who race was a pleasure that we all shared together. The kids on the track back then were all little racers in their own right, but Jason had a methodical approach on the track, most likely from sharing the love he had of racing with Bob. Jason was a fierce competitor, but he always maintained a positive attitude towards the other kids on the track. And one thing us dads could see was that Jason possessed a high level of desire and track interpretation, even at a very young age. Watching him grow over the years and through all the classes of competition was pure pleasure. Following Jason's ups and downs on the track, let the rest of us continue to feel that track emotion. His timely posts were a great example of how this young man matured into a responsible adult. Over the past few years, Jason and I would banter back and forth regarding the best mountain bike hardware or our favorite trails. We said we'd get into each other's area, we'd go ride, and we'd have a fun time. A life cut short reminds us how truly precious moments shared are between us all. Jason, hold a great place in the paddock for us and scout out all the best trails when we meet again. Rest in peace, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you for reading that, Rob. Thank you. We move on from Rob to Rob's son, Tyler, who was, as Rob said, a training partner and a competitor of Jason's from the very start. Tyler, over to you.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everyone. It's good to see so many familiar faces. I prepared some remarks that I'd like to just read off and go from there. So Jason was one of my best friends. We started racing together when I was 10, so I've known him for about 15 years, similar to Michael. He was an incredible person that accomplished so much in such a short time with us. Given I lived in New York the last 4 years or so, I didn't get to see him as much as I would have liked to in recent years, but we made the most out of all the moments we had together, whether it was going home for different parties, such as 4th of July parties, recently Super Bowl parties, a quick lunch whenever I was home at a restaurant that he loved, this Mexican place called Baja Fish. You know, a few and there's a few specific memories that I'd love to talk about that stand out to me over the years. So my first story is about racing. As I mentioned, Jason and I started racing when I was 10 years old. It was something for us to do once a month as a hobby and bond over with our dads. I never initially thought it would ever be anything more than that. But I remember being at Jason's house. We had a sleepover one time when we were probably about 10 or 11 years old. And he had that Nikki Hayden poster that Bob showed everyone earlier today at the beginning up on his wall in his room. I vividly remember that. And he told me about the Red Bull Rookies Cup. And it was something I had never heard of at the time, but he was telling me how, you know, you can race motorcycles professionally when you're older, and it's something that he really wanted to do. And from that day on, him and I both decided that racing wasn't something that was going to be a hobby where we bonded over with our dads. However, we did always bond with our dads during our time racing, but it would be something that we wanted to chase after towards a career. And you know, clearly he ended up winning numerous championships and races, and went on to race professionally for a number of years. Another one of my favorite memories, or some of my favorite memories with Jason, are in his first car. Someone else touched on his black truck. So he had, his first car was a black Nissan Frontier, which we had a ton of fun in. It had a body lift on it, no suspension, which is important to this story. A light bar on the roof, some lights on the front bumper, and a little bumper guard with a PA system. And we thought this thing was a full-blown rally truck. We were convinced. So we would take this thing through Holy Gym, flying through the trails, passing true off-road trucks with King suspension. And we always told each other that we had the lap record in Holy Gym. And to this day, I'm still convinced that we do. and Michael can attest to these stories as well. And afterward, we would take the truck out of Holy Gym, and we'd go, you know, maybe over to In-N-Out, and we'd use the PA system along the ride and have tons of fun saying God knows what on the PA system, pull up to In-N-Out. We'd refuse to roll down the windows. We'd strictly order our In-N-Out through the PA system. But we had great times in that truck growing up. And obviously at the end of it, we'd take it to the car wash before pulling it back up to his house. So, you know, his parents didn't suspect a thing, looked good as new when we brought it home. And then my final story and memory for today is about cycling. Michael Gilbert introduced me for sure to cycling, and I think Jason too when we were younger. We started out road biking. Michael was pretty good at it because at the time he would ride with his dad, and Jason and I were new to it, so we were nothing short of terrible. We would be climbing up different inclines, and Michael would have no issue pedaling up these things, and Jason and I would unclip, hop out, and start walking up the hill. We were really bad at the time, and you know, I think that may be why he switched to mountain bike riding, and he wanted to stick to the downhill stuff from then on out. But you know, all jokes aside, he he ended up really focusing on cycling and having a ton of fun cycling and becoming really good at cycling, like his dad mentioned, both road biking and mountain biking. I'll always remember the times that I had with Jason. We all miss you, Jason, but we'll never forget you, and you will live on in our memories forever. I love you like a brother, Jason. Thank you.
Some great stories there. Thanks, Tyler. We'll move on now then to Gabriel Hernandez Jr. Gabriel.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir.
All right, great. Yeah, it's good to see a lot of familiar faces and hear all the memories. Rob talking about Mama Luca, that brings up a lot of good memories, and it's good to see that everybody's doing great. Unfortunately, it's under these circumstances, but I miss you all. Hello, I'm Gabriel Hernandez. My first memory with of Jason was at Rialto Airport Speedway. And Bob, I think I was looking up at a video on YouTube, and it was like on February 7th of 2007 or something like that. So Gabe and I first met Jason and Bob the very first day that G3, my son, rode a pocket bike on an actual track. The connection between Gabe and Jason was instant. Jason being about 4 years older than Gabe, it seemed though he took a liking into being sort of like a bigger brother, a coach, or a mentor to Gabe. Gabe loved it. The entire morning, Jason helped Gabe kind of figure out the pocket bike. It was his first time on the track, and just showing him the lines and kind of leading him around and kind of how to work the throttle and things like that. And by the end of the day, those two were rolling. That relationship and character didn't end there. It continued throughout their Blada Cup season, which saw some intense battles between all kids and all kinds of kids, and ultimately Jason winning his first championship. What does it say about Jason? He had great sportsmanship, great manners, great respect. Him being kind and helpful to others helped him get faster and become a champion. He is someone who squeezed a ton of life into a short 25 years and will surely be missed by all of us. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We now move to another one of Jason's fellow competitors from the start, Gabriel Hernandez III.
Hello, Gabriel Hernandez III. I'm Gabriel Hernandez's junior son, also known as G3. So a lot of my childhood, I grew up with Jason, and we were typically always in a big group. The mini racing, just the mini racing environment was a lot like a family. If you were the new kid in, you would immediately fit in, good to go. So Jason was always very competitive, and the one thing that made him stick out the most was always the blue and orange. He was always looking factory with the Aguilar Racing t-shirt. It was just like, that guy was sick, that guy was looking clean. And it was just very competitive. And even though growing up, like, especially in the motocross field, the parents are usually even more competitive, but around us, it was always just like a family, always fun. So our race weekends were usually Saturday through Sundays. And most of the time people would think that the racing was the best part, but it was actually the Saturday nights that were the best part, right? A lot of the time, most of us would sleep there, stay there late at night, and we would do various activities. So we were always like in a group of 10 or 15, and this would consist of running on the hay bales at Apple Valley Motor Circuit, watching movies in an RV, playing various video games in an RV. And I know one of the games he was really good at was MotoGP 08. I could never beat him, but he was insanely good at that game. Also riding scooters in the garages at California Speedway, doing burnouts, leaving marks there. And then even to the extent of getting chased by some of the security at California Speedway because I think like after a certain time you couldn't ride them. But the best game out of all of these was probably playing tag at Buttonwillow. Now, if you've ever been at Buttonwillow, it gets really dark at night, right? So it was to the extent that there was a gas station that we would use as a safe spot. But basically, if you were 10 feet away and laying down on the floor, that was the perfect hiding spot. No one would be able to see you. So that's where it was just a lot of fun then. And it was to the extent that running around, some of us would even get so hurt on Saturday nights that we wouldn't even be able to race Sunday, So it was a lot of fun. And we put on a show. like I said, Jason was one of the biggest competitors. And I remember, man, that he would make me so mad, so angry when he would beat me. He was always so good, but there was only one track that I could beat him. Everywhere else, he would kick my butt. But then after riding the Blotter Cup, they moved up to the bigger bikes. I stayed riding the smaller bikes because I was a lot younger, but we would still keep in touch through video games, right? And it was always like a group of 7 of us, 7, 8 of us, and we would play games such as Grand Theft Auto, MX versus ATV, and continuing MotoGP games. And we would just stay up till like 3, 4 a.m. to the extent that probably my parents would come and yell at me and saying, hey, turn it off, like it's already too late. And we would play so much that it was to the extent that we started a clan, right? So the clan in Xbox is basically, you change your name, you pay $8 to $10 to change your name. That way other people go around saying, hey, you're not messing with this because like we're teaming up. Well, instead of like appearing as a gang, we came off as clowns, as our names ended with, let's just say, a fluid that comes out of a certain area that is white. All of our names were so bad that Xbox actually banned our names and gave us generic names. I think his name ended up being like Lazy Bunny with random numbers. Mine was Rapid Bunny with other numbers. So it was just a lot of fun. And you know, Jason and the rest of the crew, you know who you are. You guys were all like big brothers to me. Even though all you guys would tease me, including him, man, he would poke around, but I knew they supported me and had my back. If I ever needed advice with anything, even away from racing, I knew I could hit them up. But yeah, he was an exceptional motorcycle racer. He won multiple races. He's nothing short of winning. And we're all aware of the jokester and the prankster he was. He truly knew how to enjoy life. And Jason will be sorely missed, but the memories we made on race weekends will stay with me forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. We heard earlier in this evening's event from the founder of the SC Mini GP. We're now going to hear from the founder of M1 GP, Young Lee. Is Young with us?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can now. We can now.
Okay, great. Well, let me just start. First met Jason, he was up to my rib cage, and in these photos here that were taken at Apple Valley Speedway, formerly known as Grande Motor Circuit. And when he first started coming to M1 GP events, it was like any other kid that wanted to just get out on the track as much as possible, race their mini bikes. And but what stood out to me from pretty much day one after meeting Bob and Jason was his desire to do more, to give back. He expressed to me that he wanted to help the organization. And we had some people in training at the time to help some of the staff and some training. We were developing a training program at the time. And so he asked if he could be a rider coach. And hearing Michael's story, one of his first students was fun for me to hear. So thank you. And, you know, and that was one of the first things that kind of stood out to me about Jay is, you know, again, giving back to others and wanting to do a little bit more. That was just unusual for kids, especially at that age. So over the years, grew and was racing in bigger series. We kept in touch over Facebook, more recently with phone calls and texts. To see him most recently in 2019, and it was at Sonoma at a MotoAmerica round. And it was as if the big time gap hadn't really happened, because I had met up with him. We had communicated prior to the race and met up with him. You know, he was approachable, humble, and I could see right away that his core character hadn't changed. You know, over the years, racing associations, small grassroots clubs, not common that kids or adults will kind of forget about the organization and move on. But I could tell that Jason still appreciated where he came from and desire to give back. And so it was great to see him that day. I got to see Bob and I got to meet Alyssa for the first time. So it was, and then I also saw Michael up there. So yeah, that was something that stood out to me. And it was soon after that that we reconnected again, because he jumped on a Zoom call, and he expressed in that Zoom call again wanting to give back to, you know, the sport that he loved so much, and our rider clinic program, because in 2013 we actually started a school. And so he said, yeah, I'd like to get involved with that. And I was surprised because his socials knows how busy he is every day, every moment of the day. And he said, yeah, if I can fit it in my schedule, I'd like to help, you know, future riders. You know, it kind of came, the idea, I liked it because it would have brought him full circle to when he was a young coach. With us to then, you know, actually become a coach and involved in our program. So yeah, unfortunately that can't happen, but I really appreciated it's something that'll always stand out to me about Jason. For all of the reasons above, and especially to those closest to him, Jason loved the community, and you know, he had so much more to offer. So he had the passion, he stayed with the sport, and he was living his dream. Anyway, to Bob, Mrs. Aguilar, Alyssa, and all of you guys, thank you for Jason.
Thank you, Young. The next couple of speakers represent Outlaw Racing. They're both co-founders of Outlaw Racing. So firstly, we'll go across and speak to Mookie Wilkinson, please. Is Mookie on the call?
Yeah, I'm here.
There we go. Now we can hear you. There we go.
Yeah. So, you know, there's several stories, you know what I mean, that we all share. Everybody in the area, I've been sitting here listening to everybody's, you know, wonderful, beautiful stories. And, you know, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. Or yeah, you know, from the minis all the way up through, you know, as pro racing and stuff. So, you know, I mean, I had the pleasure of, you know, being around him from the beginning to the, you know, until he was all the way up in the pro racing, when he was actually passing me on the MotoAmerica circuit. That sucked, but, you know, he was faster than me. You know, and it was always to be expected, you know. So I'm just gonna share a couple things, you know, and I'm sure, you know, the other, you know, co-founder, you know, of Outlaw Racing, you know, Jason probably has many things. So I'm not gonna like try to, you know, tell the story of Outlaw Racing. I'll just tell the, you know, the stories that you know, that a couple of stories that I remember from him, you know, starting from the very beginning, you know, of start of Outlaw Racing. You know, Jason was this little bitty dude. You know, you guys have showed pictures of him, you know, this little tiny guy. And he was so interested, always just, you know, bubbly, smiling like everybody knows he was. And he was asking me, him and his dad was asking me about Outlaw Racing. I was like, you know, please, little dude, you know, we going big time, you know. So, but that wasn't like that. It was cool. It was nice to see him, you know, interested in it. And so I was like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, let's see you win a couple races, and then, you know what I mean, let's talk, you know. And this was just when we was talking about little minis, you know. So it was super cool. And I decided, and I was like, you know what? Let's put you on, you know what I mean? So me and Jason, and there was a third one of us. It was not just two co-founders. It was actually three of us. And the other one was Deshaun. Back then he was Wortham Smith or something like that. But Deshaun, you know what I mean? All of us was like, you know, it was cool with you know, seeing the little dude running around. And this was before we really got into, pushing this thing way forward. It was just kind of like, we put together something, funny, just for the adults, because that's how it kind of got started. There's a whole story about how we came up with the outlaw racing thing. But Jason was the second kid we ever actually put on the team. Because of the smiling, because he was so interested and he was adamant about it. Every time I walk around the corner, he was like, "Hey, so the outlaw racing things," and so it was cool, So he was actually our second little bitty, rider before we started trying to push forward. And the thing is, and from that moment, it was always clear that he wasn't going to let things hold him back. He wasn't going to let obstacles, whatever, no big obstacles, small obstacles hold him back at all. So, yeah, and one thing I always noticed, once we brought him on, he had a special style, that I was always jealous of, because he can always like drag his elbow and stuff like that and get really low. Everybody thought he had a pretty style. Everybody. Him and one of the guys that talked earlier, him and Tyler were way leaned over on their bike all the time. So that was always cool. One of the other things that was what was special, was that he always in the beginning, he always kind of seemed to get his bikes from me, right? Bob knows, he got his NSR in his pocket. All that stuff was before me. But like once he started moving to something for a big track, he started like, okay, he was always kind of with us, so he ended up buying my 450. I built something for Deshaun and, so he can race like Wiro, because we always like, okay, well, let's transfer from mini racing to the big tracks and sit and check it out. So Jason, sooner or later, he was like, hey, his dad was like, hey, what are you going to do with that 450? And I was like, shoot, you can have it. I'll give it to you for a good price. And next thing you know, I remember specifically, I went to Wira in Las Vegas. And I was wondering, I didn't even recognize my own bike. I didn't recognize the bike at all. But I was like, who is this dude flying around this track like ridiculously fast? I got to talk to this guy. And because he had this little thing flopping out the back of his helmet. He used to wear like something was under his helmet, and it was like flopping out the back of his helmet all the time. Maybe it was a do-rag or something like that. But whatever it was, I always noticed it. And Bob told me, he was like, oh, that's Jason. Like, are you serious? Running that, I had no clue that he had gotten that fast, like, ridiculously fast. And then you always hear about him breaking records and at Button Willow running faster than I ever could, on that 450, like doing 600 times on a 450. And everybody, all the other people was complaining they couldn't beat him. They had 650s and stuff because he was running in the Formula 2 class. And he's on a little bitty tiny bike, but was still getting them, handing it to everybody. So that was always cool to hear. And then when we actually did get this, we got a really good opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity to expand our, enterprise. Me and Jason, kept pushing it forward with this, and it was going to put all these kids, the best kids we ever saw, on 600s, and Jason, I helped Jason get, his first 600, and it was a really nice one, we got it from Terry's shop, and Jason was, not that Jason, but Jason Paredes, the one that's talking next. He wasn't even sure that this kid could even hold the dang bike up, because he was tiny at the time. He was about 80 something pounds, wasn't even 90 pounds yet. So we had stuck him out there on the bike. Bob was confident that he can do it, because Bob he's always like giggling. He'll say one word and giggle. Everybody knows how Bob talks. He say one word and giggle. So he got him out there on that bike, and even though he was that tiny and he could, barely see him on top of that bike, when he get it leaned over in his special style, it was something else. But the thing is, we got interviewed. There was a company called GP Bound Wheel. I don't know if anybody knows about Wheel, but he was making videos for outlaw racing, and he wanted to document this whole new push that, hold on, I'm still in my classroom. Everything shut off on me. But Will was documenting, making videos about these kids, because we had Tyler, who just spoke earlier. We had just, a plethora. We had 6 really fast kids. Jason Paredes decided not to race no more and just manage, keep everything organized and stuff, because he's good at that stuff. And so, but they did an interview with us up in the grandstands, where people would watch. And they were like, you have all these super fast kids, 6 of them, which one should we really look out for? Yeah. And I was like, I thought about it, and, and I was looking for the video. I couldn't find it. I was looking, this whole time for it, but, because everybody was pretty much on the same pace, but Jason was the smallest one. He was the tiniest by far, and he was behind him at the time. I said, well, and you could, if you ever find the video, you'll see. I said on there, all the kids are pretty fast. All the kids are fast. They're all winning. They're all up towards, nipping at the heels of Bryce Prince and Benny Solis, and they're just starting out. They were just starting out, but I said, the one y'all should really watch out for is the one that's hungry in the back. I said, Jason Aguilar, that dude, you got to watch out for him. He's small and stuff right now, but sooner or later, watch, mark my words. And it's on there. It's on that video. It was shot in early 2012. And, I'm going to continue to look for it so I can, I'll post it up if I ever find it. It was a nice video about all the kids and how they're progressing and how, it showed them playing, just like other parents. A lot of the parents have been speaking. They was like, the kids play and we're having a good time. They would compete on the track like it was none other. They would be nose to tail. But when they get off the bikes, they all park them. The parents is all putting the bikes on the stands, and they run out there on their little skateboards or a Segway or whatever they had. They were just out there cutting up, So, but it was always fun to watch. And Jason was always a part of that, So there was always something always to remember when I would call, because unfortunately, I haven't lost a bug for racing. So I still mess around out there on the track. I would have to call Jason because he would, like everybody was saying in the beginning, that he's like deep into helping people. And he worked at, Flash Tune for electronics. And I'm always having problems, trying to get everything dialed in, and Jason will have to iron them out. So he was the genius that we all called to have my bike fixed. And, so I always was thankful for that. And I'd be yelling in the background, thanks, Jason, My wife didn't know, but my new wife, she didn't know him, but she met him once. That's when I first bought my latest 600, my newest one. And she was talking, this is before any of this ever happened, she was like, that guy, because I was pulling the bike out of the truck, and Jason and Andre Oaks was out there racing at Apex, and both of them came running. When they saw me, they came running just like we haven't, like there was no time in between. They came over running to try to help me, unload the bike and to say hi. And she was, she wasn't my wife at the time. She was just a girlfriend, but she was like, those boys, were super cool. Like, where do you know them from? I was like, man, they rode for us at a time when everything was like on an up and up. And then they end up, getting their pro debut and stuff. So she was like, but they were like super cool. She was super impressed with, how nice Jason was and how they came over to say it, to say hi and, and not be too big, not too big to say hi to other people. So I have a million stories. I don't want to take up everybody's time. Everybody else has a million stories, so they need time for theirs. But I'm always going to remember that, I'm always going to have that outlaw racing, those days that we that they got started. And I'm always going to remember that he was the second one on the team, and just because he was so bubbly and kept repeatedly asking about it. And so I'm happy that he was a go-getter and he never let things stand in his way. So, you know, we loved you, and he's always going to be with us forever. I have all those pictures, and, you know, I mean, I'm always going to have them up, you know, in the garage. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, we move then to one of the other co-founders, as I said. We'll speak now to Jason Paredes. If you could just unmute, Jason, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry about that.
There we go. There we go.
All right. My name's Jason Paredes. As Mookie said, you know, him and I used to race minis with SE Mini. You know, for me, it was, you know, a childhood like dream to race motorcycles, and I would watch motorcycle racing with my dad, and, you know, watching guys dragging their knee and all that, and I was like, Dad, that's what I want to do. But he was like, no, you want to race, you race karts. You know, my dad used to drag race, brother used to race karts. I dabbled a little bit in quarter midgets. But as I got older, I started seeing these mini bikes, and that's, you know, it was kart racing of motorcycles. So that's how I got into this. And, you know, as racing, you know, with SE Mini, you know, we got to meet, you know, some of these parents and these kids. You know, a lot of them, you know, a lot of kids on here. I call them kids, but they're, you know, they're adults now. You know, but it was good times, you know, seeing this, and, you know, I feel like, you know, it was a pleasure to watch, you know, Jay, as, you know, from a little kid racing pocket bikes, you know, to moving up to racing 600s. You know, I remember I made a mistake one time, and I called him a little Pedrosa, and he gave me a look I'll never forget. And later on, Bob told me, like, hey, he doesn't like Pedrosa, he's a Nicky Hayden fan. So, you know, it just I never did that again. You know, Jason was always fast, and, you know, he was always the smallest of the group, but he was always fast. And when he would race, he was always like, you couldn't tell if, you know, if he was just really quiet or if he was really serious about, you know, what he was going to do on the track. You know, and it was funny because even when you spoke to him, it was like speaking to a little adult. You know, he was really mature for his age, you know, and I found it kind of fascinating because it was like you're talking to a little man, you know. And he was a good kid, you know. And, you know, and like Mookie was saying, you know, when he wanted to move up to 600, I was like, I don't know about this. I mean, this kid's 80 pounds, you know. And I even told Bob, hey, do you think maybe he should race a 650 first, you know, to try that out? And Bob's like, no, Jason says he can do it, and we're gonna do it. And sure enough, I mean, he got on the bike and he was able to turn laps, and, you know, he was, you know, he wasn't he was the slowest of the group at first, but, you know, I always knew that he was going to come around. I mean, once he got the hang of it, he was the way he was when he raced. I mean, he was very focused, and I just knew that in a matter of time, he was just gonna take it by storm, and he did. You know, he rode really well, and, you know, like Mookie said, I stopped racing and, you know, focused on other parts of racing. And, you know, and it's kind of strange because, you know, as he went racing professionally, I did also. You know, I went into professional racing, but like doing data for riders and stuff. And in 2018, you know, in 2017, he won the 600 Super Sport Championship, and he was moving on. He got picked up by a team, and he called me one day and we were talking, and he was like, I'm looking for a crew chief, and and I was like, okay, I can help you find a crew chief, and my focus was on finding him a crew chief, right? And it was kind of a shock, and also like, it just took me by shock when he asked, like, well, why don't you be my crew chief? You want to be my crew chief? And I didn't know what to say. I've always done data, and how can I say no to Jay? I was on board and made sure everything was squared away at home for me to go race, with Jay, and we learned a lot from each other. I mean, hearing all these stories about Jason, him and I are pretty similar. I mean, like Bob was saying, I mean, he wouldn't eat anything without smelling it. Same here. When I was a kid, I'm left-handed. It's the I mean, I was a very picky eater, and and it was fun. I mean, him and I traveled 2018. We flew together. We drove to the track together. I mean, we even shared a room for a part of the season. And now it makes sense, because I always wondered why when we would get to the room, he would like go to the bed and he would be pulling the sheets and looking under the pillows and doing. I'm like, what the heck's wrong with this guy? What's he looking for? And now I know he was probably looking for spiders, or bugs. And and it's funny to hear these stories. And the other thing too, a good story was, I remember the first time we were gonna go test out at Chuckwalla, and Jason's like, you know what, I'll pick you up on the way, I'll drive you out there. So he comes and he pulls up in his little Ford Focus RS, and he picks me up and we start driving, and the next thing I know, I'm like, man, I should have brought a helmet. I mean, the way, I mean, he loved to drive. I mean, he was, I mean, whatever, if it was a motorcycle, a car, whatever, I mean, he knew what he was doing. While we're out at Chuckwalla, we had some downtime, and I never got to go around that track, and Jay's like, you know what, I'll take you around the track. So we hop in his little Ford Focus, and there was someone else with us, and they're in the passenger seat, and I was in the back. And he's like, oh, we're just gonna cruise around the track. And he does one lap, and his next lap's faster and faster, and I'm just holding on for life in the back seat as he's just throwing this car around the track like nothing, and I'm sitting back there holding on for dear life, like, wow, I am getting old, right? This is scaring me. I don't usually get scared, right? And he was scaring me. And then finally they threw a flag, and they're like, oh, we have to go in to put helmets on, right? If we're gonna go this fast, we need helmets. So he pulls in, he's like, okay, let's go get our helmets. And I got out and I'm like, I'm done. And I was like, nope, I'm done. I'll let me work on let me worry about your bike. You go, you showed me the track, right? But that was Jay. Jay always lived, I mean, he lived his life to the fullest. Whatever he did, and I learned that from him. He always taught me, Jason, live your life. Don't worry about what other people think, right? Just do what you do what you want to do. And that's something that I'll never forget, is how he lived his life. He enjoyed his life. He showed us that you can live your dreams, right? I mean, he wanted to be a professional racer. He wanted to win a championship. He wanted to do that, and he worked hard, put his mind to it, and he did it. Another story is, everybody knows, Jay knows he doesn't like the rain. right? And that, what do you expect from, a Southern California racer? I mean, we barely get any rain, but when we'd go back east and the rain would come, you would see in his face that I'm not sure about this. But being a professional, he would suit up, go out, and he would ride a good race. It just showed that, when it came time to put his lid down, I mean, he was a different animal, right? He went out and he did his job, and that's something that impressed me. I just wish season would have went a little better, but all in all, he was a good kid, and I won't forget those days. And every time we went to the airport, he'd always ask me how my daughters are, how my wife is. But on the final note, I just want to say, Jay, thanks for being a good friend and a little brother. Thank you for letting me be part of your racing career. Thanks for the laughs, the good times, throughout the years, the pranks that you'd like to pull. I'll never forget those. And thank you for teaching me to live my life to the fullest. Champ, you'll be missed but never forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. So we've heard from a couple of people from the Outlaw Racing team. We're now going to hear from a couple involved with tuned racing. As we saw earlier, some pictures that Bob shared of Jason's time there. We'll hear first then from Mike Pond.
And can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hopefully you can see me. I have my phone and my computer going at the same time.
We can see the back of you.
The back of me? That's not
how
how
we see you.
Whoop, sorry, give me 1 second.
No, it's not. We're on a different person there, I think.
That's Mr. Oaks.
It is indeed. I've just realized I can see at the bottom. So
Hang on, it isn't letting me replace the spotlight, so sorry about that.
No worries.
I'm just having a little technical difficulty here, but we will get that resolved.
Don't worry, Michael. We can if you just
we can hear
retake
you.
your seat, because you'll be fine when we get to you. And Mike, we could hear you, so I know we couldn't see you. So we'll work on the technical difficulties. But if you wanted to go ahead, we can still hear you.
Okay, great. I'd like to thank you all for letting me speak today. Jason impacted all of our lives so great. Seems like anyone that got to know him, basically became family with him. I remember the first time I met, or actually physically met him and his father, Bob. I was sponsoring a couple of classes with WSMC, and we were all racing together. That's how we kind of all grown this family together. We meet and grow at the racetrack. But Jason had won a class that I had sponsored. He didn't have the sticker on his bike. He was just a young kid, and they were still filling their way out. He was racing with Mookie, with Outlaw. And he was pretty upset, that he wasn't going, or the office wasn't giving him his sponsorship money or his winnings from the race, because he wasn't running the sticker. And so I went up, they let me know that I went over and spoke with him and Bob, and they understood. And because of his professionalism and the way he handled himself, I couldn't help but give him the check. He earned that check. He won it, and he assured me that he'd have the stickers on there from there on out. And that's just the kind of guy he was. He was a stand-up guy, and he made sure. And he won lots more money from that class as well, because he was a talented rider. I mean, once he started riding with us, we got the capability to measure lean angle, and we'd see him hit over 60 degrees lean angle on a Yamaha R6 on a regular, and that was pretty remarkable. We raced against him for a little over a year, I think it was, with WSMC, and then as well with Moto West, and we got to talking with him. And in 2014, he came onto the team and was going to go out and do some national racing with us. Jason's first round with us was at Daytona, and he came out, you know, like you guys, everyone has said before, as a professional, his head on, straight, focused, wanting to make a splash, and qualified third in his race that weekend. The kid was just, he was astounding when it came to riding motorcycles and how well and hard he would focus and absorb the information that was thrown at him. Our next round, he actually got my team's first national podium. He put us on the box, and I still got everyone right.
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Okay, so you know, Platoon Racing, Jason was a blessing, and for me personally, he was like a little brother to me. You know, the whole Aguilar family, they've become extended family to me, and you know, I'm at a loss of words to think that I can't talk to him every week anymore at, you know, at Flash Tune. But someone spoke earlier about the Moto 1GP 24-hour race that he won. I think it was Bob. I was in that race as well, and we took second to him. Our team did. You know, he was a fierce competitor and a champion alike, but not just on the racetrack. He was a champion in life. As a whole, I mean, he just took it by the horns, and like other people have said, it did it his way. You know, he was a picky eater. One time he was talking about how he didn't like chicken, but he did like eggs. And this was when he was younger, and we were just getting to know him. And he didn't quite know at the time where the eggs came from. But you know, he was just a goofy kid, and I loved him, and sure gonna miss him. You know, I don't want to take up a lot of people's time, but with his quick wit and, you know, his schoolboy type humor and charm, you couldn't help but like him. And we're all gonna miss him a lot, a whole great deal. I think I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and apologies for a couple of the technical glitches that we've got there. We couldn't see you on camera. We are working behind the scenes to try and get that fixed. We'll move on now to hear from another competitor and good friend of Jason's, Bryce Prince.
Hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, and it seems that we can see you as well. So
okay,
we seem to be functioning again. Good.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. You know, Jason and I's relationship obviously started with Mike in Tuned Industries and Tuned Racing, and it was both of our first opportunities to continue pro racing. I had been in pro racing since 2011 and kind of fell out of it, and Mike gave me an opportunity to get back into it in 2013, and Jason shortly after in 2014. And that's kind of the start of my story with Jason. I feel like we followed in each other's footsteps quite a bit. I was a carrot he chased after and eventually caught up to, and he was just you know, I was able to win the championship in 2016, and he followed up with 2017. And man, I couldn't tell you of a more deserving person than Jason. He gave it his all, and all of us that have been in the racing paddock, you know, truly understand how difficult being a professional motorcycle is. And nobody on the outside would really know how much hard work and sacrifice and time and family effort that it takes to be put into this sport. So a couple of things I wanted to note out about the first time I met Jason, and I think a lot of us when we first met him will know he has these stages that when you first meet him, at first he's very quiet, and that was my first impression of him. And then as he gets to know you more, you start realizing he has a good sense of humor. The jokes start coming out. He starts pulling his little pranks and his tricks. And then the more comfortable he gets around you, you start realizing he is extremely stubborn and extremely competitive. And that was the interesting part. I never knew which side I was going to get with him, was going to be the joking around or the competitive character he was. But to round out all these great qualities he had, he was, you know, he was an extremely caring person. There was nobody in this industry, whether he liked them or not, that he wouldn't go out of his way to help. And that really, really shows a lot. So a couple funny things that I'll bring up that I knew about Jason is one day he was telling me how he didn't like cheese on his sandwiches because he doesn't like cheese. And I brought up to him that I'm like, isn't it your favorite food pizza? And he's like, oh no, that's different. So for some reason that always stuck in my head about how he doesn't like cheese but loves pizza. Oh man. So another interesting moment we had, I believe this was, I want to say back in around 2015, racing at Buttonwillow together for a local club race. I want to say it was maybe Moto West Grand Prix. And I got the whole shot and he dive bombed me in a turn one and almost stood me up and ran me off the track. And I was pretty frustrated, and we came in after. We had a good race. He ended up having a mechanical issue, and I won the race. And I came in after, and I was like, Jason, what were you doing? And he goes, I just needed to beat you today. I was determined to beat you, and I knew that I needed to give it my all from the get-go. And that's just telling you the kind of guy Jason was. He gave it his all when he was on the track. He was an extremely aggressive rider. And as Bob said, he was a very tactical rider, and he was very smart. He had a lot of stuff going on in his head when he was on a motorcycle, and he really did a good job at portraying that. And one of the last things that we got to experience together, my fiance Savannah, myself, and him had the pleasure of going and racing in South America. And the first thing I thought of going back to his picky food is, I was like, Jason, are you going to starve down there? What are you going to eat? So that was just one of the things that we kept giving him crap about the whole way down there, with how picky he was with his food. And man, that was just one of the, you know, I will tell you though, that all the people down there in South America absolutely adored Jason. And they could not believe how small he was, how young he was, and how fast he was. And that just kept ringing around, and we had a great time down there. And then, you know, after his championship, he started getting more into working, and, you know, had to get a job, had to pay for racing, had to pay for bills. And I remember when he took on a job at Flashtune, I was sitting there talking to him one day, and, you know, I was like, Jason, I'm like, I thought you didn't like electrical stuff. Why are you working at an electronics motorcycle place? And lo and behold, he's like, you know, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to learn, because I need to do this, and it'll make me a better rider, and it'll help me become better on the motorcycle. And that was, you know, his avenue, and his extra motivation was always to, anything he did in his life was because he wanted to continue to put all the pieces of this puzzle together, that, you know, he could continue to achieve these goals. And man, he was so motivated with all of his motorcycle racing, and all of us that have been apart from him in his career at the track have seen it. And yeah, so a couple more things. You know, he and I had a very good relationship together. I still talk to him every day, you know, given I tune a lot of motorcycles, and was able to talk to him and Chris at Flashtune. And I was very thankful to be a part. I was able to help get him an R6 that he was going to race this year in 2022 in the MotoAmerica, 2022 in the MotoAmerica season. And, you know, I think looking back on what Jason's achieved, you know, in my eyes, he's achieved one of the hardest things that, you know, nobody would be able to achieve, and that's winning a national motorcycle road race championship. There's very few people in the world that can say that they've won a pro motorcycle racing championship. And that's something that I know I take away for myself, and something that he truly reached a great achievement point. And I know he looks back on that, you know, he'd be looking back on that now and happy with what he did. So another side note, my fiance Savannah and him actually became very close. I would say closer than he and I were. She looked after him like a little brother. And you know, they loved each other's humor and they were great friends. And Bob and Savannah and Ellen were all, you know, they all talked a ton. It was just one big family. And I just want to say, you know, about 5 or 6 years ago, which just recently Savannah reminded me and showed me this text message, and I forgot the exact terminology, but Savannah was always like, Jason, don't be stupid, be careful, don't be doing dumb things, because she wanted, you know, she cared about him and wanted to make sure he was doing something. And I remember his response was, I'm doing this because I love it, and if, you know, and if it's my time to go, at least I know I did it doing something I love to do. So, and that's where it stands out for me, is just that even back then, you know, 5, 6 years ago, when he was still in his teens, you know, he knew in his head that he was doing something that he wanted to do, and he did not feel, and, you know, he could not be more confident that what he was doing was worth the risk, and what he was doing was worth all the sacrifice and all the fulfillment that he got out of it for his life. And being one that's experienced all this stuff that he did, all the sacrifice and all the, you know, all the heartbreak, all the injuries, everything he fought through, it takes a very strong man to be able to do that. So, you know, I'll miss you, Jason. Thank you.
Thanks, Bryce. We move on to Chuck Graves next, and Graves Motorsports have played a huge part in Jason's career, and I know that Chuck has some words that he'd like to share with us.
Thanks, Michael. Wow, what a interesting group of people. There's a lot of things I didn't know about Jason that I'm learning this evening. I met Jason more on a professional level, and I didn't know about a lot of the pranks he did, and while we got closer and closer as the years went on and became close in a professional level, and spoke daily on the phone, that part of it he never brought out with me. So I'm just really happy to be here and hear all of this. He never spoke of his mini championships, although other people had done that for him. And Bob, I really appreciate having the opportunity to hear about all of those things, and the opportunity to speak. Now, when I thought about what I would say here today, it was, how would I say goodbye to somebody that I was building a relationship with for this many years and felt good about? And what would I say to that person when they were leaving? And so I tried to put everything in perspective. And so I wrote it down, and I'd like to run through that. You know, one of the things I thought about was you know, when you meet people in life and you enjoy their presence and you see things that are special about them, why don't we let them know at that time? Now, as I get to this point, and I can't voice those things to him, and so this is just it's a tough thing, huh? So one thing I want to say about Jason, he was well received in the motorcycle community. He was always a gentleman. He did his best, and but the fierce competitor part must have always been after the face shield came down, because even when he had a tough race or had something that happened, like Bob had mentioned earlier, he wanted to go superbike racing, and he had found a sponsor, and shortly thereafter he came and met with me and wanted to tell me all about it, and he was so excited. But even when he was let down, when that sponsor pulled back and couldn't do the things he'd promised Jason, he just stood up and said, well, look, I'm going to try and do this anyways, and if I can't, okay, it is what it is. It was always his line when he couldn't do exactly what he wanted. He would say that to me. It is what it is. So Yeah, so I'm going to move to the next part. What really attracted me to Jason was his desire for knowledge and his desire for a challenge. When we worked together with his electronics learning skills, he would ask me questions, but he would never ask me something without really trying to solve the problem on his own. Before he would call, he would tell me, okay, I did this, and this, but I'm still right here. Okay, and I really appreciated that. He didn't just pick up the phone and ask for an answer. He always tried to work it out on his own, and he did the same thing in his racing. You know, we got to know each other more as this 2015, 2016 relationship with tuned racing that Graves had. And in 2017, we had the opportunity to help him with his program more than we had in the past. And I think everybody at Graves enjoyed, you know, Jason's presence and enjoyed watching him achieve these results with the small amount of help that we provided him. So, and he went on to win his first national championship. You know, after that, he would regularly call me in the evenings just on his way home from work to ask my advice about some program he would be trying to put together, or something, whether it was related to our company or FDECU. He would just ask for that advice. And I took great pride in being able to at least share the experiences that I had had with Jason. And so I really want to thank Jason for giving me that opportunity to break away from the grind of the world to actually interact with a young racer. So that was really special to me. You know, something else about Jason, he really had great taste for high quality and good looks. If you ever looked at the motorcycles that he's raced, I believe he and another gentleman that was with the Outlaw team, Mookie, which I don't really know personally. I believe he and Mookie worked together on some design stuff, but at least that's how I remember the conversations with him. But his great taste didn't stop there. When he couldn't race Superbike that year, and he showed up at my office shortly thereafter with a brand new Super Whammy BMW, the nice, all the bells and whistle vehicle, and says, if I can't race, I'm going to drive something cool. and that really stuck with me. I thought, you know, this guy he's a hard worker. He's nice to be around, and he's got great taste, and he loves high quality stuff. But you know, this is all the same passions that I have. So that part was really, really cool. You know, this is another thing. Even when that happened, it didn't crush his demeanor to continue on. He would, even when things were really, really tough and he knew how hard it would be, he would still just keep forging on. And that's really what it takes to be a champion. So, yeah, I wanted to go back to the quote from the car. It is what it is, and if I can't race, then I'm going to drive this. And that just really, really sticks with me. I think he sold it shortly thereafter and got something probably more cost effective. I really don't know what else to say, but what I do want to say, I want to thank you, Jason, for making me feel special, and goodbye.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you. We're going to move on now to Chris Gardell from FTECU. Are you there, Chris?
So Jason was a racing acquaintance for a few years before he started working with me. We sponsored him, and then in 2016 he started working for the company. And at the time, it wasn't even really anything all that serious. He wanted something part-time that was better than his stock boy position that he was doing, and I really didn't know what I was getting into. He took his competitive spirit into the workplace as well. It was pretty quickly that he was starting to teach the older guys the things that they had forgotten. And he just had this never-ending thirst for knowledge that I really respected. I never had to. He really cared about the why in things, and it was something that can't be taught. I don't. Sorry. Jason was somebody that I wouldn't.
It's okay, Chris. Take your time.
Sorry.
No need to apologize. Take your time.
I just want to say that I feel really happy for the time that I was able to spend with him. I feel blessed. Like I couldn't have found somebody who cared more. It's just impossible. You know, he would joke about hitting his head too hard and having brain damage and he can't answer emails, but he was ridiculously smart. And he brought his own encouragement everywhere he went. He never got discouraged. He took everything in stride, and I don't know. I just want to say that I feel blessed to spend the time with him, and he'll be missed.
Thanks, Chris.
That's all I have.
Thank you. We move on now to Nicole Cox, who obviously Jason spent a lot of time with in the MotoAmerica paddock, and she has some words as well. Nicole?
I actually met Jason when he was coming up at the club level, and so known him for quite some time, and I think this very special group of industry people really shows how special he is. And I've enjoyed hearing the stories. And Bob, actually, when he got on the podium, I remember he saw Dr. Rossi, and Dr. Rossi put a bit of foam on the bottom of his boot so that he could put weight on it. And that was really amazing that he was able to, to podium in that race. And that's one of my memories of him. And my memory of, you talking about how tough he is. I mean, that's what he would do. He put foam on the bottom of his boot so that he could weight the pegs. So yeah, like I said, I met him when he was coming from club racing. He was obviously very distinctive. He's had that super extreme elbows out style, which, I mean, honestly, kind of seemed impossible for somebody with his frame, but he made it work. I recognize him because he's always respectful. He was always willing to give advice. Whether you were, doing 24s at Willow or 2 minutes at Willow, he talked to you like you were a racer and, his equal and his friend. And he just really loved being on two wheels. He would tag along with me sometimes to the motocross track or a mini track. And apparently he loved being on two wheels so much that he did not one, but two 24-hour endurance races on mini bikes, which I can say is absolute torture. And I only did one. I remember the TTR that I put together, the steering head bearings failed halfway through the race, and I figured we're done. And Jason went out there and set faster laps on that bike, just figuring it out. And, just showing us that we could continue. we ended up finishing second overall and winning our class. And I remember sitting with Bob in the pit wall area as it got a little bit later in the race, and I was really nervous about finishing, and every other TTR had blown up. And I see him wheeling out of this corner. And at first I thought it was a mistake, and then he did it again and again and again. And Bob just starts laughing. And I'm like, what is he doing? And he's just having fun. He's like, you know what? This bike is hard to ride because the steering head bearings have failed, but I'm going to have a blast. And that's what he did. He had an awesome time riding motorcycles. You know, and his toughness I saw then, the throttle throw was tough because I put a 2-stroke carb on a 4-stroke because I was cheap. And he had blisters on his hands at the end of that race because he took the longest stints and he never once complained. He just kept riding, smiling, and power wheeling at TTR 125. So, I mean, this was really like a metaphor for the rest of his career. When things were tough, when the bike wasn't working, when there was problems with the team, he just put his head down and rode. Like I've had so many riders come and talk to me or complain, and you know, that's fine, we're friends. And Jason honestly never did. He just put his head down and he rode and he kept moving forward. He came in here and he sat in the conference room pitching, asking for a Superbike Premier team. And, you know, it really kind of came full circle. And I was super proud of him because he's sitting there with Chuck and Wayne and Richard and the guys, and he just really impressed them with his drive, with his professionalism, with his manners, you know, with the fact that he was such a gentleman. And when his sponsor situation fell through, I was super gutted for him. And he texted me, and I want to read that text because it just shows his professionalism in racing. He said, "Hey, Nicole, I wanted to follow up with you and keep you in the loop. At this point, I'm going to throw in the towel on the race program for this year. The companies have no budget for me this year. I've exhausted every option. And at this point, I'm not even close to having a bike built or enough money to build one. I have a few interested sponsors for the 2022 season, and it seems like I'm making a big push for a great program then. As for now, I'll just keep working away and riding my mountain bike and supermoto. Maybe something will open up partway through the year. Who knows? Either way, I'm not calling it quits completely, and I really want to be back next year." And then I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." And he goes, "It's definitely disappointing, but I did everything I could do, and at least I can live with myself knowing that I'll be back." And that's what he did. He put his head down and he said, "I'm going to keep going." And I'm just really sad that I won't be able to see him battle with Michael again. That was some of my favorite memories, sitting in control on pins and needles on 2017, watching those two kids go at it. You know, and I have to say, talking with the MotoAmerica family here, everyone has said that he's just absolutely the best of us. He represented what a champion should be. He was always striving for that next level and treating everyone around him with respect and kindness. And so I want to say thank you to Bob, Ellen, Alyssa, Megan, and the rest of the Aguilar family for sharing him with all of us. We're honored to have known him, and we send our deepest condolences.
Thank you, Nicole. The next couple of speakers are from Dunlop. Let's firstly hear from Corey Maynard, please. Is Corey on the call? Okay, maybe a couple of difficulties. Let's go to Tony Romo, please. Okay, may have also dropped. Are you there, Tony? Okay, we'll move on to our next contributor, David Tovar, I think is how you pronounce it. Apologies if I've pronounced that wrong, from SBK Paint. No. Yes, there we go.
All right, now?
Yeah, there we go. Now we see you as well.
All right, thank you. So yeah, I'm David Tovar. You pretty much said that right. So let me start from the beginning. I used to dabble a little bit in racing, and that's how I met all of you. I mean, this is like a call of legends. I'm looking at like a bunch of people from my past, and it's kind of amazing to see the group of people that Jason has brought together today. It's amazing. like everybody else, I'm noticing similarities between Jason and I, and it's just heartwarming. I will go one further and say he died on my birthday, so that was nice of him. But I'll always think of him for that, and I will never forget that. So it started with tuned racing, and I'll never forget the first time I saw Jason. I literally was worried about him. I thought to myself, he probably couldn't even ride the 600. He just looked so small. And I'll never forget the first time I took him seriously. I was talking to Bob, and I don't know, I'm always in my own world, so I wasn't really paying too much attention until Bob said to me, yeah, he was catching up with Bryce. And up until that point in my life, Bryce is kind of like my hero. I remember Bryce was like 10 years younger than me. I raced at Willow with him, and there was nothing that I was ever going to do to get a lap time like Bryce. He was like the benchmark. He did a 24 at Willow on his R6. And I always thought to myself, there was never going to be anybody faster than Bryce that I was going to know personally on a racetrack. So Toon picked him up, and I thought, maybe he's like a pay rider or something. And then, Bob enlightened me to the fact that that definitely was not the case. So that was impressive because, his weight, I was like, he'd ride it, So as, life happens, things come apart sometimes. And he ended up separating from tuned racing. And I was very proud to paint for tuned racing because I felt like they looked very professional. And Mike put together a team miraculously out of nowhere. And they went out and they went hard. And that was a good time because, when you're starting a company and trying to make a name, it's very difficult to be legitimate. So they made me legitimate. And I was worried about that being a thing. And then the next thing you know, I get a call from Jason, and he says he's going to go racing, and he would never let anybody else paint his motorcycle but me. And I think that was the first time anybody actually showed me loyalty in this industry. And I think I hung on to that for dear life. Jason and I never had a single moment that was brash or harsh, which coming from me is kind of impossible. He only brings out the best in people. That's what I remember. We have a lot of good memories, I'm just his painter, so I was never too much on the track with him. But what I can tell you about Jason is that anytime he came by, he had time. And we didn't really bother talking about the paint job too much because whoever was doing his designing they didn't need no help. I had to follow it to the millimeter, to like the micrometer, right? Because these paint jobs were impressive. So I just basically had to hit the mark for him. And I'll never forget, he brought me tailor-made bodywork. And our first exchange was like, I don't think they're actually going to sell them like this because these are shit. Like there's no primer on these. And they were like 10 hours of extra work. But for Jason, because he gave me the loyalty, there was no talking about money or anything like that. He was just always going to pay me what I wanted, and it wasn't an issue. And he's the only person that would call me and say, I'll come down after 10 o'clock at night from Los Angeles to help you sand. Unreal. What racer has time or cares enough to do that? But we always got it done for him on deadline. And he did me the favor of winning the championship in 2017. And probably my most prized possession in regards to my career is the plaque that's behind me right now. I've dealt with a lot of champions and I've dealt with a lot of riders, but Jason's the only one that ever made me feel like I was part of the team. I could show up at Laguna Seca and everybody was too busy, but Bob and Jason always had a moment for me, and it makes you feel human. It makes you feel special, so him coming to the house and stuff, he'd always drop me down. I'd be like, where you got? Okay, I'm at the house. Come drop off your bodywork. And knowing Jason quickly became knowing Jason and Megan, believe it or not. I was so impressed by Jason because he was so young, but he had so much maturity and he really seemed to cherish his relationship, And I think at one point I even told Megan and Jason, I said, I love you guys together. I'm like, you guys are just amazing. And I meant that, Jason's capacity for everything in life is unreal, to keep a relationship together at a young age or not cheat when you're a champion or, be like doing stupid things. You could tell it was never on his mind. He was a sincere person. And that sincerity brought the best out in me. We would have conversations. I think one time we talked about MotoGP outside of my garage in an alley for like an hour and a half. And Megan was just so nice about it. Thank you, Megan, by the way. she never had anything bad to say, or she never acted impatient, and she always just seemed so happy to be there. And that just speaks volumes, for an individual, because like she said, when they were building the van, he would send me messages and show me the progress, and we'd be like, that's amazing. He's all in. So, when he passed away, that's probably the biggest hit, to my company ever. I just had a message from him November 30th. We spoke, and he was telling me all about his plans for 2022 and how he was never going to let anybody else paint his bike. And the season before, he had the wonderful Kawasaki with the 90 scheme. And it was so funny because he reached out to me to apologize because I didn't paint it. I said, it's fine, man. I was like, I'm just happy to see you riding. And I don't think I'm that big of a person, but for him, I am, because I think I'd be jealous or mad if I saw such a big rider or such a big name riding for somebody else, but when I saw him, I just was so happy. I was like, wow, he got to ride. I think that was sincere. And I was looking forward to 2022 with Jason. And his last message to me was that he was going to take care of everybody. He was so happy to get back that he said that he was going to be running a few different liveries that year, and he was going to keep me busy. And he just always had all the right things to say. And I don't think that I'll ever forget that. And that's pretty much all I've got. Oh, and one thing, I wanted to say thank you to Bob and his mother as well for bringing up an amazing boy who in turn grew up to be an even more amazing man. And that's it.
Thank you, David. We're now going to move to Ethan Chaplock, who most of us will know from the MotoAmerica paddock.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you guys for having me. Is my camera working right now? Or is it being difficult? Oh, it's being difficult. Here we go. Wrong camera.
Now it is. There
cool.
We go.
There we go. Yeah, real quick before I get into what I had planned, it's funny. David and I have the same birthday, and I was joking around with one of the other people in the paddock that it's Jason's way of reminding me every single year on my birthday to not be a bitch, as he would say, and not play small. So thanks for that, Jay. Appreciate it. Appreciate you, brother, keeping me honest and keeping supporting. So yeah, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Ethan. Actually, it's funny how I came to meet Jason and get the chance to know him. I met Alyssa well before I met Jay. We went to Valencia High School together freshman year. I was one of the few blonde hair, blue-eyed white kids in that school, and she was one of the few people who was kind enough to make the time to talk with me. So I got close with her, and I knew of Jay. He worked at Ralph's, as somebody had mentioned earlier, grocery store right by us. So I'd go into the store and occasionally see him, and I'd get a, hey, sup, man? Sup, man? That's about it until years later. It was fast forward, I mean, probably over 10 years. And it was my first race in the MotoAmerica paddock. My fiance and I had just moved from California to Georgia. I'm in a completely new setting. And I had posted a picture on my Instagram story of me at Road Atlanta. Literally first time in the MotoAmerica paddock. I was there supporting Hunter Dunham, who was my first athlete in the paddock that I was working with. And I don't even think 15 minutes went by that was on my story. And I get a text from Alyssa. You have to find Jason. You have to see him. I already texted him too. Go make it happen. Go, go, go. And, I'm in an uncomfortable setting. I'm an introvert by nature when it comes to an uncomfortable setting. But yeah, I can't. I know Alyssa would be on my ass if I didn't make it happen. So I wandered around for probably 20 minutes, had no clue where I was going. And finally I came to his trailer, and I remember Poncho looking at me like, who the hell are you? Like, what are you doing here? Jason's side, just, doing his thing. Okay, well, so luckily he came out, saved me from not knowing where the hell I was going. And I'm definitely grateful that Alyssa played matchmaker, for lack of a better word, that day, because over the last few years, I've definitely had the, not only the privilege of being Jason's performance coach and helping him with his fitness and mental performance, but also he became one of my most supportive friends and really helped me, believe that I had a place in the paddock and that I could make a living out of something I was passionate doing. The paddock it won't be the same without my spontaneous visits from Jay. He'd come into my recovery area and, he'd either be picking my brain about how I can make Gilbert stopped going faster, and he had his own nice ways of saying that, which was usually something along the lines of, dude, can we, like, how do we make him stop being such a little bitch? What's wrong with him this weekend? So, but it was all love, as we know. He loved Gilbert and just liked to push him hard. And it was either that or he'd offer me a pocket full of either goldfish or animal crackers. I'm not even kidding. One of these times I'm sitting there, he's like, hey man, do you want some goldfish? Sure, that's cool. Out of his pocket, no shame, fistful. Oh, well, I got to take him now. So thank you. I appreciate that. So while I learned a lot working with Jay these past few years, you know, it wasn't his innate ability to just figure things out. It wasn't his way that he just made things happen regardless of what was in the way. It wasn't even his insane work ethic that impressed me the most about him. It was his ability to take the time to do the things he loved regardless of how busy or how crazy things might have been. And that's something that he had been hard on me to do, because I'm somebody who works nonstop and I don't take time for myself. So I think that's something that we could all learn from Jason moving forward, is just to take the time to enjoy the time we have here and to be grateful for what we've got. And it's definitely something I'm going to work to emulate in my life. So we'll miss you, Jason. I appreciate everything, and I appreciate you being an incredible friend. And thank you for the Aguilar family for having me on. So appreciate it.
Thanks, Ethan. Okay, our next speaker was going to be Craig Saber. We heard from him earlier through a message that was read by Rob Linders. So we now go back to one of Jason's early day competitors from the beginning. We're going to hear now from Andre Oakes, please. And there we go, perfect.
All right, cool. Hey guys, I grew up racing with Jason. I don't think we really became too close until we got on, like, later on the 125s and even on the 600s. But I feel like we were always kind of not looked down on, but like we were always not as competitive as everybody else. So I remember one day I was at Michael's house. We were spending the night there, and I think it was Andrew Zader and a couple other people went for a bike ride, and we went over to Jason's house, and we met up with Jason, and we rode on some bike path there, and then Jason and I rode back to Michael's house. But I think we wanted to show that we could be as competitive as they were, or as fast as they were. So I latched onto Jason's wheel, and I think we thought we knew the way back to Michael's house. So we just took off, and we were gone for, I don't know, maybe 30-40 minutes, and realized we didn't know the way back. So we had to call Michael and, hey man, how do we get back? Where are we going? We managed to find our way back. But it was just stuff like that. He always pushed me to be a better person or a better rider. And I always try to strive to be as good as he was. And we kind of fed off that, I believe. And then another story I have, we were at Daytona for, I think, both of our first pro seasons, full seasons. And we were riding around on the on one of the Zumas, or one of the scooters, and I didn't have a scooter at the time, so we were riding 2-up on his, and we saw a flock of seagulls, and they were just kind of hanging out, and we kind of knew what we had to do, and this may not be all right, but we rode through the flock of seagulls, and they're taking shits on us, and it was a bunch of fun. And then we thought it was the funniest thing, and we rode over to someone's garage, and I think it was Chris McGuire, and we're like, man, dude, look at this. We got a video of it, and we thought it was the funniest thing, and he was so pissed. I'm gonna call PETA and this and that, and I was like, oh. I hope you're not that mad. But no, it was, every time I was around Jason, it was always smiles ear to ear. He brought out the best of literally everybody. It was super cool. I loved being around him. And I remember, I think the last race, Mid-Ohio in 2014, it was just, we were doing something. I was hanging out with him and Bryce Prince, and we squished ourselves on a scooter, and the three of us, and there's a picture floating around somewhere, but I think that's a good time as well. I always talked to him about riding flat track, and he loved flat track. He didn't do it too much, or as much as he had wished, I believe. But I got him down to Del Mar one year, and I don't think he had ever ridden before. But I threw him on a 100. We both battled on the 100s, and immediately he was just as quick as I was, if not faster. And I was trying to follow him. We were slamming into each other, and honestly, that was probably the most fun I'd had racing with him. Even like growing up racing with him, battling up with him on the 600s and stuff like that. I think that was the most fun I had with him on the 100s. And then I hadn't seen him for a couple of years after that, and I had always tried to get him to ride on the flat track or whatever it may be, go for a mountain bike ride or a road bike ride. But 4 or 5 years ago, I saw him out at Apex, and we linked up and we were riding together, and I think it was a race that weekend, and we both raced Supermoto. That was probably one of the last times I had seen him, unfortunately, but it was just super cool. I always loved being around him, and he was just a super awesome guy. And honestly, I don't have enough to say about him, and I'm bummed about that, but he's just a great guy. And I'm really thankful to be called one of his friends, and thankful that I was fortunate enough to grow up with him. So thank you.
Thanks, Andre. We're now going to move to your dad, actually, and speak to Michael Oakes, who would also like to add a few words. Michael.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, my name is Mike Oakes, and man, these stories are incredible. I learned a lot tonight about Jason, and I just want to say how blessed I am to have known Jason and Bob. We had some great times. I mean, we originally started out in dirt track. That was kind of my roots from when I raced, and so that's what we started out doing. And then over time, we kind of progressed into Supermoto and dirt track. We did both because there just wasn't enough dirt track racing going on. Once a month just wasn't enough for us, so we wanted to do more. So we started doing, a Supermoto race, and then we started, and then we'd met the Roberts, Matt and Joe Roberts, and they were kind of doing the same. And then Matt's going, hey, we're going to start doing some road racing, and we're going to start doing some mini road racing. And so it's like, wow, that sounds kind of cool. So we had a couple of Supermoto bikes, so we could race in certain classes with those bikes. And so it was easy for us to do that. So we did, and we really liked it. We met a whole new group of people, and Jason and Bob were one of those people there that were doing the mini road racing. So, we finally quit doing dirt track and kind of dropped off the Supermoto and just was, just doing road racing. And we got into it more and more. And there was just all the kids, such a great group of kids at that time, for sure. And all the dads, we all got to be great friends. And we'd always pit together. And just, I'll never forget those times, because, if somebody needed a part, or if somebody needed some extra help working on a bike, we just all would work together to make sure everybody got out there. And like everybody said, when the kids go out there, it's just, they're just competitors against each other. But off the track, like you say, they were just having a great time. And I miss those times. They were probably the greatest times of all the racing that we did, and So, yeah, all the way up through 600s. And like when we were on the outlaw team, we were one of the kids that were on that team. And wow, it was just great to see the kids from the mini road racing all the way up through the 600s, and, you know, to sharpen their skills, and their talents just improved, and they just got faster and faster. And it was so cool to watch. And I just really enjoyed it. And so to me, that was just, and Jason was just, he was a one-of-a-kind kid. I just loved him. He was just, like everybody said, he was very determined, very serious, but he just had this personality that just cracked you up. You know, it's just, he was just so cool. So anyway, I miss him dearly. And Bob, thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. The stories tonight were incredible. I've never had experienced anything like this before. And a lot of the faces I've seen, I haven't seen in a while. Love all you guys. The racing community is just so close knit, and it's just great. And anyway, I'm not much of a speaker, so that's pretty much all I have. But thanks again for having me, and good night to everybody. I miss Jason very much. I think about him every day. And anyway, that's all I have. Love you guys.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks, Andre, as well, who was in the background there for those words. I'm sure they're echoed by everybody on the call. Now, hopefully the technical difficulties that we were having at the beginning don't spring up again, because the next person we're going to hear from is somebody who sadly can't be with us today, but they have sent in a video message. So hopefully this will work. Anthony Alonso is a competitor of Jason's from the very beginning. So all being well, you guys will be able to hear this.
Hey, Jason. It's been a really long time since we last saw each other. You know, the reasons for this video are really unfortunate, and I feel really bad that happened to you. And you know, I really hope everything will be okay with your family and stuff. And you know, I always remember you as the guy that I would be battling against. I remember on minis and on the big bikes we get into some really good. We put on a really good show, and you know, just remember all that, and you know, the good old times. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to let you know that you'll be missed, and really sorry for what happened. And that's it. You'll be missed, man. Bye.
Hopefully you guys could see and hear that message from Anthony. We're now going to move to one of Jason's neighbors. Christine Mayfield is up next.
Good evening, friends. We're the Aguilar's neighbors, Christine and Lenny Mayfield. With us are many friendly faces from the street that Jason grew up on. We've been together for almost 25 years. We watched Jason grow from an infant to a toddler, to a child, to a teen, and finally to an incredible young adult. Jason was the friendly boy on the street. He always had a ready smile and interesting topic to chat about. Whether it be his racing, his family, his girlfriend, his puppy, or the new really fast car that he just bought, Jason shared his stories in a way that made you feel like you were part of his world. Children grow up, make choices, and in Jason's case, live boldly. He once told me that he was better on 2 wheels than 2 feet. His happy place was anywhere going fast. Several years ago, Jason was so excited when I gave up my Hyundai and got a car that Jason deemed fast. He told me all about the engine and what it could do. When I shared that I would never use the car for speed, Jason said, "But if you want to, you can." Jason didn't think about the what ifs. Instead, he was an action man. He made things happen. As parents, we introduce our very young children to hobbies that we think they might have the right body for, disposition for, or skill set for. It might be baseball, swimming, debate team, or even riding a motorcycle. There really is nothing cuter than an 8-year-old riding a pocket bike in your neighborhood. It's very loud, but it is really cute. As children get older and become teenagers, they begin making their own choices. Many children decide that they're tired of soccer or tennis or whatever, and they quit. Jason did the opposite. He dove in hard. He knew that racing was his passion. As owner, rider, manager, he made things happen. He worked tirelessly to make his dream, his choice, a reality.
My name's Lenny. I knew Jason since he was a little kid, riding his razor across the street until he grew to a nice young man. You know, we were both mechanics. I've been an aircraft mechanic my whole life, and he would always be across the street. Our driveways faced each other. I'm always working on something, 2 wheels or 4 wheels in my driveway, and him doing the same. So we'd always have something in common to talk about. And I'd always talk to him, learn more about motorcycles, and he'd always talk to me to learn more about airplanes. And I always had him because my airplanes were faster than his motorcycles. So he couldn't beat me there. But he was a kid that every morning I'd be out working, he'd be out working, give a wave, he'd come over, borrow a tool. We talked for 30 minutes or so. And he was always just wanting to learn. The more he could learn, the happier he was, whether it was about airplanes or what I was working on or what he was working on that I wanted to learn about. And I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss looking across the street and giving him a wave and say, hey, how's it going? We're going to miss you, Jason.
To the Aguilar family, the neighbors offer their heartfelt condolences and want you to know that we are here for you and for each other forever. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We now will move on to Jason's cousin, Scott Taubman. Again, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Scott?
Yep, close enough. So I am actually Lenny Leibowitz's cousin. Lenny is Jason's grandfather on his mother's side. My dad was Lenny's uncle. So I got to know Jason over the last 3 or 4 years when he started coming out here to Phoenix to see his grandpa, and got to know Megan at the same time. And we shared something in common, and that was the love of going fast and enjoyed motors and that kind of stuff. I grew up in Los Angeles in the 50s and 60s, street racing and doing all that kind of good stuff back when you could do those things. And the LAPD kind of left you alone as long as you weren't doing it in areas that people lived in. So we had a lot of stuff to talk about and enjoyed that. I grew up with his mom. We lived about 10 minutes apart. His mom, Ellen's about 10 years younger than me, but we grew up together and spent pretty much every Sunday together for quite a long time. We were either at their house or at our house. So kind of give you a little taste of the fact that I've known the family for a very, very long time, and getting to know Jay and Megan over the last few years, I can definitely attest to the fact that he loved pizza. We have in our backyard a wood-burning pizza oven, and whenever they would come over, that was the only thing he would ask us to make. And so we would have that every single time they were here. My wife is a phenomenal cook, and yet all we could make is pizza. So we will miss him. I was looking very much forward to spending a lot of time with him. And in fact, I was hoping this season to spend some time out at the track with him and do those things. I did a little, besides street racing, I did a little stock car racing back in the day when Saga Speedway existed and when Ontario and Riverside existed. So got to do, I never did motorcycle racing. It was never my thing, but I like 4 wheels and metal around me. It was a little more to my liking, but I just certainly enjoyed talking to him, and especially when he was driving back from tracks. We would often talk on the phone and kind of talk about what happened that weekend and kind of pick it apart a little bit. But certainly will miss him. And I've talked to Ellen and Bob a few times since that day. And by the way, that day was also my youngest brother's birthday. He passed away last year, so it's another day that we will all remember, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to categorize that. But love to all of you. Love to my cousin Ellen and Bob and Alyssa and all of the Aguilar family. And Lenny was on the call for a while, but he got off a little bit ago. Sends his love as well. And this is a good chance to see a lot of his racing community, which I've watched you guys on TV for the last few years. But you know, it happens, and we move on. But love to all of you. Take care.
Thank you, Scott, and take care yourself. We move on now to Eddie Robinson, who is a designer who also knew Jason very well.
Can you hear me?
We can, and we can see you as well. Looking splendid, sir.
Hey guys, good evening to everyone. Thanks to Alyssa and Bob and the whole Aguilar family for allowing me a moment to speak of Jason. I'll try to be quick because I know this has kind of gone on a long time. But my heart goes out to you all and to you, Megan. I began to do artwork for Toon Racing several years ago, and that's when and how I met Jason. He and I eventually hit it off after I got past his quiet demeanor. I was definitely unsure if the guy even liked me at first, but hey, I was also the new guy with the team, so who knows? I know I liked him, and I saw his potential as a racer. Bryce was the one at the time who was winning and was going to take the championship that year, and Jason was, so to speak, on deck. He had to race through some injuries that season, and one of the things I remember the most was running up to the corkscrew after he had crashed in practice. He was down on the track, the ambulance was there, and I was on the edge yelling at the medics through the fence, trying to let them know that he had a plate and a bunch of screws in his foot and about 50 stitches holding it all together. And I was really concerned about him at that point. He ended up not being able to race that weekend, but in the next race, the next national later, he was back on the bike, and he was tough. He was fast, and he would go on to win the championship the next year after Bryce won that one that year in 2016. So I helped Jason with liveries and artwork and number plates in the last 6 years. When he did win that championship, I was so very proud and so grateful to him because he included me in giving out these number plates to his sponsors, and I cherish this thing. I, like a lot of you, I watched the funeral of Nikki Hayden, and never in a million years would I have known then that I'd be sitting here participating in something very similar for a guy I knew and loved. When that day I woke up and had coffee and was looking at my phone, looking at Instagram, and I saw Bryce's post, and it was a picture of him and Jason on the podium, and I was like smiling, like, yeah, it was a good memory. I remember that. And then I read it, and I apparently yelled no really loud. I didn't even hear it. All the wind went out of me. My ears popped and started ringing. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I immediately thought of Bob, and I was just wrecked for it. Such a sad and tragic end to such a great guy, and at such a young age. I can't even express how sorry I am to everyone who knew and loved Jason. On a lighter note, I loved hearing all the stories about Jason and how funny he was, how everyone knows how fast he was, but what a lot of you may not know is that he was a really frustrated artist. I designed his liveries for the last few years, his number plates, the bike that I think Chuck Graves was referencing earlier. That's something I helped Jason out with. And as jealous as I was about Jason for how fast he was on the track, he was a little bit jealous of me for what I could do on the computer. And he was always looking for tips. And we went back and forth ad nauseum about his designs. And one of the saddest things about last year was that he didn't get to race that Superbike season. And he and me had worked so hard on this design. It never got shown. And I know he'd want this to see the light of day. So I'm going to share my screen and show you guys this design that he and me came up with. By the way, this was the last text I had with him, and this is so Jason, totally fearless. He was about ready to start racing the season, and he hadn't ridden much. And I love this little emoji he put right here. Dope. Anyway, this was the bike, the super bike that Jason and me designed for him for 2021. It's the Yamaha R1. He had all his sponsors on here. He was ready to go. He was building the bike, and he was so proud of this thing and couldn't wait to reveal it, and it never saw the light of day. And this was the bike that he and me designed for this year and that he was going to run. The new number plates where he said he loved Joan Mir's numbers from MotoGP. So I took the numbers and reworked them into the 96 for him, and that's what we ended up with. That's really all I've got. I really hope that this night has served as some consolation for the family and for Megan and for all of Jason's friends and competitors. And thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. It's a really sad thing, but life goes on, and Jason, I know, is smiling down, looking at all of this and loving this. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Eddie. We do have just a couple more people to hear from before we close out. Now we're going to ask to speak to Arif Salam, please.
Hi there. Unlike most people here, I actually didn't know Jason that well, to be completely honest with all of you. I'm a friend of Alyssa's, and I got very close to the family pretty early on. And the first few times I went over, I met Bob, I met Ellen, we got very close. And I remember my first meeting with Jason. He was just a really quiet guy. I had heard stories from Alyssa about him, so I know a little bit about him. He was just really quiet, but I remember I started asking him about, Alyssa told me, that you race, you do motorcycle stuff, you're really into cars. And we had this like 5-minute long conversation. It wasn't very long at all, but you could, his eyes just lit up for a second. His eyes just lit up, and he was talking to me about, what he's working on, what car he was interested in. We talked about, I think that was the time he bought, I think it was a Ford Fiesta or something similar. And I knew it drove Ellen up a wall when he bought it. He was just so interested in talking about it. But oh man, it's hard to find stuff like that. It's hard to see stuff like that in someone, especially, my first few meetings with Jason, he was just so quiet. But once he started talking about something that he really loved and he was really passionate, the Ford Focus RS, there you go. But he just opened up, and you could definitely see, his passion, his love for what he did and how much he cared. And I was a complete and total stranger to him. I'd barely seen the guy maybe 2-3 times, and I'd only talked to him for maybe 10 minutes up to that point. And just how much he cared, how much passion he had in what he did, and just seeing that was just great. And I'm sorry to say I didn't get to know him more because our schedules never lined up. I was busy, he was busy. Every time I came over, he wasn't there. I would always hear, oh, he's out working on this bike, he's out with his friends, he's doing this, he's doing that. But the whole time I knew, based on what everyone was telling me, that he was doing what he loved. He was doing what was important to him, what mattered to him, and this is all he ever talked about. I remember when he was racing, I would always share his racing post. Alyssa would share with me, and I was definitely a supporter of his. And my heart absolutely goes out to Alyssa, to Bob, to Ellen, to Megan, just to everyone that was affected by his passing. And you know what? I feel regret. I feel regret that I wasn't able to get to know him better based on because I've been sitting here for the last 3.5 hours just listening to everyone tell these great, amazing stories about him. And he just seemed like such a cool guy. And I'm going to miss you, Jason. And I wish I had gotten to know you better. Thank you.
Thanks, Arif. We now move to Joe Rocha, another one of Jason's friends.
What's up, guys? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Because like Jason would say, I'm a boomer and I'm not very good with this technical stuff. So my name is Joe. I met Jason. Everybody I've been listening to, this has been awesome. You guys have all known him for so long. I only met him in early 19 when I went to work at FTECU. So I think I've known him, from then until his last day, but because we've been super close with mountain bike riding. We have a group chat going. We spoke every day, and I worked with him for 1.5 years. And listening to everybody talk about his demeanor and his how picky he was with food, with cheese, it's hilarious. It brings back great memories. And again, yeah, I mean, I just want to say, you guys all said it all, man. Jason is a great kid. We joked, I'm twice his age, so he called me dad and I called him son. No disrespect to his real father, which I never got a chance to meet. Bob, pleasure. We had great times, man. I always thought that Jason was kind of an old soul for how young he was. Just the way he carried himself, and just I don't know. I love that kid, and I don't know what else to say. I'm just glad to be a part of this, and and we still ride our mountain bikes, almost every day in his memory, and he rides with us. And I wish I was as fast as he was, or as good as he was on 2 wheels. But yeah, like I didn't write anything down. I'm going off script, but I'm gonna miss Jason a lot. He meant a lot to me, and we were close when I worked with him, and I got to meet Megan, and Megan and I got pretty close because she would come visit at FTECU and she would hang out, and they're all good friends of mine, and it's gonna be weird and tough without them. And I thank everybody for letting me speak for this moment, and I hope everybody stays strong and he lives in your memory forever, as he will in mine. And that's all I've got. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. We're now going to move on to a couple of Jason's mountain biking buddies. Firstly, let's move across and speak to Alex Berjankowski. And again, I hope I've pronounced that correctly.
No, that was perfect, Mr. Hill. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. On behalf of the entire Aguilar family, Ms. McDonald, Anthony, myself, I really like to begin by thanking everyone that's here today. You guys' continued condolences, support is more than appreciated throughout this entire time and process. It's been a long month, and it's been a lot. Like I said, it doesn't surprise me how many genuine individuals surrounded Jason. This whole racing community, I wish I could be on 2 wheels for motorcycle riding, because you guys are awesome. Just day in, day out. My name is Alex Berjakowski, and I'm Jason's best friend. And I'm also part of an amazing group that Jason introduced me to. We really grew as a brotherhood between myself, Anthony, and Zach. Mountain biking is kind of funny because usually when you start riding with groups of peoples and whatnot, you kind of have these mutual friends and whatnot. But for me, I met Jason just simply riding at Santiago Oaks. Kid, as you guys all know, he's doing his little wheelies, running past me, and we just started riding together. You know, things clicked. We always got all on the same page and became best friends after all of that. You know, I'd like to again just remind everyone, including myself, that Jason didn't want this to be a sad day. I just think throughout listening to everyone's stories, you know, I think everyone's really kept it together. But again, he wants this to be a celebration of his life, and you know, for everyone to carry on the last memories, all his personal experiences you might have had and share with him, and you know, reflect throughout this whole evening about it. Jason, he was so much more than a motorcycle racer, the mountain biker. You know, he had perseverance. He had a dominant spirit. I mean, motorcycling, mountain biking, those are two things. But I mean, driving cars, running around, whatever it was, everything. You know, who can go take a piss quicker? That was Jason. Everything was all about as quick as possible. But he was always cool, calm, collected. And on our trips, it always amazed me how he can always talk at 24, 25 years old. You know, he's talking to 40, 45-year-old sponsors left and right, customers, and just so professional. And like his maturity, I mean, I'm 30 years old and his maturity is right there on my level, if not more. But, you know, I can say he was a true professional at such a young age, you know, for what he did and everything he did. But as always, you know, we always joke about it, but behind those Oakleys, he's always wearing you guys probably see at the track, you know, race day and whatnot like that. He always had sarcasm, you know, he's witty, has angelic humor, but he always made everything a game or difficult or competition. I mean, there's so many memories I can share with you guys from all of our 6 a.m. steeps in Laguna. We do every weekday, you know, from Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays. That's what we're always doing. To making me climb 9,000 feet Santiago Peak that's currently covered. We did it at 2 a.m. You know, thousands of miles of trips. Last summer, we did the best trip of our lives. He got finished in Washington with the race in June. I flew up there with my own bike. You know, he picked me up at the airport. And we didn't have an agenda. We didn't have a plan. And that's kind of that's his entire persona, you know, we'll get to it. We'll figure it out whenever it is. And I kind of knew where we were going to go, but we were in the middle of a heat wave and I just we just started driving and that's what it was. And we ended up going from Washington all the way up to the border, Idaho, Montana, over to Colorado, Utah. And then, you know, that was about 8 parts of that. It was about 7 or 8 days of driving. It was the best time of my life. We talked about everything, you know, life, careers, relationships, experiences, you know, all his future aspirations. So I was asking him, hey, you know, I know MotoGP's, you know, you're getting old, but, you know, what else might you see? And he's like, you know, start a company or something like that. That's not really on my agenda. I'm happy with what I'm doing. And that's what I always loved about Jason. He was just always doing what he did, you know, and that was really great times. You know, mountain biking was his training, if you will. I always wanted him to get more of the moto guys that he did. You know, Gilbert is always his best friend. I like to think of his moto world. I'm his best friend of his mountain biking worlds. And I always wanted him to come out more. I was like, hey, bring Gilbert. And, you know, you have a friend, Rory, and, you know, the brothers, Justin, and, you know, bring them out. You know, we should just get going. And he's like, they're always afraid of getting hurt or cross training or whatever. And Jason's just such like a different competitive individual that, I mean, again, you guys all know how he was, and it was just always how he was, you know, always competitive, always on the leading edge of being first and everything like that. Saturday, you know, February 5th, it'll be a day I'll never forget. You know, we always did what we loved right in our own backyard with my brothers Jason and Anthony. So it just wasn't our day, guys. On behalf of all you guys, I really apologize. Did what we could. It was tough. You know, he got through surgery, and I know he's a strong individual. This kid, you guys all know, he's been down at 150 miles an hour. His bike slung through porta potties, everything, and it just wasn't our day. Me and Joe just got done with a ride about 2-3 hours ago. Well, it's about 5 o'clock and we're just sitting there. All the dumb shit we've always done. It's just like, just wasn't our day that day. But again, just sitting there on top of the world today, Laguna, just there's just different vibe out there. I know Jason, you would have, this is the way, you always said, doing what I love, exactly what Bob said, here for a good time, not a long time. And that's what he did, But as I conclude my thoughts, I realized he taught us all a valuable lesson. That's just to leave no regrets. Make every day your best possible, have fun, and cherish the ones you love around you. And always have fun. That was Jason. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Our penultimate contributor in this celebration of Jason's life is Anthony Maladra.
Hey there, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can indeed.
Okay, hi there. My name is Anthony. Jason was one of my best friends, and I just want to thank all the family and friends here for giving me a few moments to share some words and some memories. I'm not always the best with public speaking and this kind of scenario, and I just want to let you know I wrote down some few thoughts and I'll read it throughout. I just wanted to start how I met Jason. I met Jason on a mountain bike ride in Alyssa, Viejo. I was new to the area at the time. I didn't really know anybody, and I was really just riding alone, just trying to figure out where to go. On that ride, I stopped for a moment to fix something on my bike, and just as I started riding again, Jason and I were side by side, and it turns out we were heading to the same trail. I'm naturally a little introverted, and he was just so friendly to me, and we ended up talking on the whole climb. We had similar interests, both in motocross and supercross, and obviously he got into his background in motorcycle racing, which of course blew my mind, and I hit him with a barrage of at least 100 questions. We ended up riding another 15 miles that day, which, by the way, at the time, I had no business riding for that long. I vividly remember watching him go at one of the climbs with one hand off his handlebars and just casually talking to me. And I am seeing stars trying to catch my breath. At that moment, I knew that if I wanted Jason to keep inviting me on rides, I needed to get it together. Since then, we spent countless hours on the trail, camping, meeting up, driving to wherever we were going to go ride that day or just hang out. We could confide in each other. We can talk about everything serious that we were facing at the moment, or just laugh and have a good time. I was able to learn a lot about Jason's character as a person. He was extremely thoughtful, caring, generous. He always wanted to make sure we had everything we needed and was always willing to give whatever he had. It didn't take much either. I remember casually mentioning, like, hey, I kind of like your bike, man. I think that, at some point I might be interested in getting the same one. And without hesitation, he would say, dude, take mine. You can keep it for the weekend. I'll even come drop it off. So whenever we were all together, we were there, we were having a good time. Jason was so lighthearted and he kept things fun no matter what we got ourselves into. This is a true testament to his sense of humor, as both Karen and John mentioned this already, but on one of our rides, we were completely gassed, running low on energy, and approaching one of the biggest climbs of the ride. And here comes Jason cruising along, blasting the Keyboard Cat theme song on his iPhone for the 30th time that day, just to get us to laugh. Although he kept it lighthearted with us on mountain bikes, he was so driven and passionate. He was a doer, and he was ready to work endlessly to achieve his goals, whether it be in his racing career, building out a Sprinter van, or in any other aspect of his life. His approach to life didn't have any holds, and he was willing to take the chances in order to live life exactly how he wanted to. This will inspire me for the rest of my life. I have to thank Jason because he's given me the passion that I have for mountain biking, and he's introduced me to so many people in this sport that are now my family. The friendship that I have with Jason and the memories we've built are something that I'll cherish forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Our final contributor this evening is a racer who knows Jason very well and is also speaking not just as Jason's friend, but also representing the Road Racing World Action Fund, Kyle Wyman.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks to the Aguilar family for having me on. Jason was always to me a acquaintance in the paddock for a lot of years, and never really interacted with him too much until he started working for Flash Tune, and he was fulfilling some orders here and there for me. And funny enough, when we first kind of hit it off was actually a butt dial. I butt dialed him at some point, and he texted me making sure I didn't need him for something from Flash Tune, and we kind of started chatting in the middle of 2020 just to kind of see how each other's programs were going throughout the year, and we decided to take a little track walk together at Road Atlanta. Really, just kind of get on bicycles and go look at the track and talk about the weekend going into it. And neither of us could find bicycles at the time, so we decided to do it on foot. And looking back, it was it takes maybe an hour to walk the track there, and we did it just me and him on foot, and really kind of hit it off, and got to talking, and just when he looked to 2021 wanting to move to Superbike, we got to speak a lot throughout that off season, because he was just so curious about certain things, and we really bonded over team management and putting a program together, and kind of hit it off. And yeah, just a great rider, a great kid, really like so many people have said, he's a doer. He wanted to get it done. And we thought a lot about certain things in racing the same way. And fortunately, this evening sitting here, I've been able to have the privilege of learning so much more about him outside of the paddock, and who he was as a person. And even seeing, when Bob showed the poster that was his favorite poster of Nikki Hayden, that poster from 2002 was the only poster I put on my ceiling in my bedroom when I was growing up. I put the rest of the posters on the wall, but that one was one that stood out to me as well, and pushed me, and I'm sure pushed him to really find a way to make things happen in this sport. And that just, it's another thing that we had in common that I would have never known. And it was a pleasure knowing him. And looking back through some of our conversations over the last couple of years, so many text messages he sent me, whether it was congratulating me or trying to pick me up when something went wrong. He finished every message with, always rooting for you. And I was always rooting for him too. So I'm here also to talk a little about the Road Racing World Action Fund. Bob has requested that, on behalf of Jason and his memory, that people donate to the Air Fence Fund. Road Racing World has, as you can see, Alyssa has put a link in the chat for all who want to donate to help deploy air fence to protect riders. I've had a couple 100-mile-an-hour plus encounters with air fence over the years with some brake failures, and I truly would not be sitting here without that. So yeah, I appreciate everybody who's donated to that, and yeah, that's and this has been such a privilege, and for sure we'll miss you, Jason, and my love and thoughts go out to all you guys. And it's our extended family in racing is it means everything to us. When we lose one of our family members, it's tough, but the fulfillment in this sport, the highs can't be so high if we don't have some lows. And for sure Jason understood that, and he gave it everything, and we're all going to give it everything. So thanks for having me a part of this. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kyle. To finish with, I'd just like to close by saying, as I said at the beginning, that I will be forever grateful that Jason trusted this bald-headed guy that doesn't even have his own teeth anymore to be part of his racing program. And he was an incredible friend. I will miss him dearly. And as it says on the backdrop that I have behind me, I'm sure I speak for everybody when I say that Jason Aguilar will always be in our hearts. Because I was involved with his promotion in his website will remain active. and become a living memory for everybody that wants to view the website. It will remain. We've spoken together with Bob and the family that the website will remain, and over the course of the coming days, we will make some changes to the website to allow that to remain for those that want to continue to remember Jason through his website, Aguilar Racing. As Kyle said, donations are being accepted for the Road Racing World Action Fund. And as I say, just to close with, I'm sure you'll all agree that Jason Aguilar was not just an incredible racer, he was an incredible human being, and I, for one, will dearly miss him. Just want to finish also by saying a massive thank you to Bob and to Ellen, to Alyssa and to Megan for asking me to host this event. I've hosted many events, but I have to say honestly, none that have meant so much to me to be asked to do this. So I hope I've done you proud, Jason, and thank you all very much for being with us this evening. Thank you.